Tale of the Heike Monogatari, Volume 1. Chapter 1. Gion Shōja. The sound of the bell of Gion Shōja echoes the impermanence of all things. The hue of the flowers of the teak tree declares that they who flourish must be brought low. Yea, the proud ones are but for a moment, like an evening dream in springtime. The mighty are destroyed at the last, they are but as the dust before the wind. If thou ask concerning the rulers of other countries far off, Choko of Shin, Ono of Kan, Shui of Ryo, Rokyuzan of Tu, all these, not following in the paths of the government of all the king and emperors who went before them, sought pleasure only, not entering into counsel nor heeding the disorders of their country, having no knowledge of the affliction of their people. They did not endure, but perished utterly. So also if thou inquire concerning our own country, Masakato in the period Shohei, Sumitomo in Tenkyo, Jishin in Kawa, Shinrai in Heiji, all were arrogant and bold of heart in divers manners. Yet if we consider what is told of the former Prime Minister Prince Taira no Asan Kiyomori, the lay priest of Rokuhara, of a more recent time, neither in their words nor their intentions were they his equal. As to his ancestry, he was the eldest son of Asan Tadamori, chief of the Department of Justice, grandson of Masamori Sanuki no Kami, who was descended in the 9th generation from Katsurabara Shino, prince of the first rank and chief of the Department of Ceremonies, the 5th son of the Emperor Kwamu. This prince's son Takami no O had died without either office or rank, and it was his son Takamamachi no O who first received the surname of Taira, and before receiving the office of Kazusa no Suki suddenly gave up his royal rank and became a subject. His son Chinjufu Shogun Yashimachi afterwards changed his name to Kunika, and from this Kunika to Masamori. These 6 generations, though always receiving government stipends, yet had not such rank as permitted them to appear at court. Chapter 2. The Ascent AT Court. Now Tadamori, while holding the office of Bizun no Kami, by the request of the retired Emperor Toba, had built the temple Toku, Cho, Juin and the Sa Ju San, Gen, Du or Hall 30, 3 ken long, within which were 1,001 Buddhas, its first festival being on the 13th day of the 3rd month of the 1st year of Tensho. As a reward, he was honored by receiving the territory of the province of Tamba, which then happened to be unappropriated. Moreover, the emperor of his bounty graciously permitted him to attend the court, which Tadamori did for the first time at the age of 36. But the higher courtiers were furious with jealousy and plotted to assassinate him on the evening of the festival of Go Sechai Toyo no Akari no Sechi on the 23rd day of the 11th month of the same year. Tadamori, who was not a civil official, being born of a line of warriors, on hearing of this was troubled in his heart for himself and his house at this unexpected shame that was come upon him. But finally, as he was in duty bound to serve his august master under all conditions, he made his preparations beforehand. Before entering the court, he provided himself with a long dirk which he girt on under his long court dress, and turning aside to a dimly lit place, slowly drew the blade, and passed it through the hair of his head so that it gleamed afar off with an icy sheen, causing all to stare open-eyed. Moreover, a retainer of Tadamori, by birth of the same family, a grandson of Taira no Mokonasu Sadamitsu, and son of Shino Saburadiu Ifusa, Sahio no Joisada by name, wearing a body armor laced with bright green under a light green karajinu or loose overdress, and carrying under his arm a takai with a bowstring bag attached, was waiting in the Kaniwa, the small court by the Sarioden. Now the curando, no to or chief of the record office, and some underlings of his, thinking it strange that one wearing unsuitable costume should be within the balustrade of the steps of the court near the bell, rope of the library, and wondering if he was not some disorderly fellow, an official of the 6th rank ordered him to depart quickly. But Isada thus replied, "Because I have heard that tonight they will try to kill my lord Bizun, no, Kamidono have I come hither." And he remained there and did not depart. and they saw that there was nothing more to be done, and thus the attempt did not take place. But when Tadamori danced in the august presence of the Mikado at his imperial wish, the others mocked at him, changing the words of the music and singing, "Is, Haiji wa sugame nari." The wine pot of Ise has turned into a vinegar jar. In thus mentioning the vessels of his province, they punned on his title of Ise Haishi. And since Tadamori had a squint in one eye, sugame, they also alluded to this in the lampoon. Tadamori, not being able to do anything, left the presence before the entertainment had ended, and going behind the Shishinden, a place that could be seen by everyone, deposited the sword that he was carrying at his side in the hands of the Tonomo, no, Tsukasa. Isada, who was waiting for his lord, immediately asked him what had happened, but he, though greatly wishing to tell him, seeing in his face the expression of one who would even do violence in the palace itself, should he tell him the truth, merely answered that nothing out of the common had taken place. The rice of Harima, the scouring rush, and the muku leaves, they polish up people fine raiment. Though long ago such things had happened, nothing had been done, and now people said that what was to be done was doubtful. For this there was imperial order and ancient precedent, but Ascent Tadamori had stationed a soldier wearing common dress, said to be a retainer of his family, in the small court of the palace, and had Ko to the Go, Sechi, wearing a sword by his side, and both these counts were acts of disorder such as were seldom met with heretofore. Indeed, it was one crime piled on another, a charge he would find it difficult to escape. All the court nobles together petitioned that his name should be erased from the list of courtiers, and that he herewith be deprived of rank and office. His Majesty the Mikado, greatly surprised, ordered Tadamori into his presence to make examination into the affair. In his reply, he stated that as to the presence of his retainer in the palace, he certainly knew nothing about it. But if his retainers had heard of the designs that people were plotting against him lately, and in order to help him against such dishonor had come hither secretly without informing him, then he had no power to prevent it. But if there be any blame, do I not yield my body herewith? As for the matter of the sword, I deposited it in the Tanamatsu Kasa, and if it be brought out from thence, it may be seen if it be a real sword or not. As this seemed quite plausible, they hastened to bring forth the sword and exhibit it. Its outside was that of a dirk in a black lacquer sheath, but within was only a wooden blade covered with silver. Although he had displayed the appearance of a sword to avoid dishonor, his substitution of a wooden blade as a precaution against an after accusation was exceeding praiseworthy. A plan like this is very commendable in a warrior. That his retainer should have been in attendance in the court of the palace, this too is an example for retainers of the bushi. So no fault was found in Tadamori, but on the contrary, his conduct was greatly admired, and he was pronounced guiltless. Chapter 3. Suzuki. Tadamori children all had the title of I know Suk, and when they attended at court they were welcomed by everyone. On one occasion when Tadamori went up to the capital from Bizen, and the retired Emperor Toba augustly deigned to inquire of him about the scenery of Akashi, he answered thus: "When the morning breaks o'er the wind-swept sand of Akashi, only the moon on high casts its faint beams on the waves." The ex-Mikado was pleased to admire this verse and ordered it to be preserved in the collection entitled, "There was a fair lady in waiting in the Sendo palace of the ex-Midado much beloved by Tadamori, whom he was wont to visit every evening. And it chanced that one night, after so doing he left in her room a fan painted with the rising moon. The other ladies seeing it were much amused, saying, 'Oh, how doubtful is the place where the moon has risen.' To which the lady replied, 'If the moon indeed has drifted down from the heavens, surely then the sky must be a little obscure.' Thus showing that her wit was not at all shallow. This was the mother of Satsuma, no, Kami Tadanori. As people are drawn to each other by similar dispositions, Tadamori taste was matched by her elegance. Then Tadamori becoming Jayo. Bu Kaio 3 afterwards died at the age of 58 on the 15th day of the first month of the 3rd year of Ninpei. His eldest son, Kiyomori, followed in his footsteps. In the first year of Hojin, when the Sadejin of Uji brought the realm into disorder, he put himself at the head of the imperial party and was rewarded for his services. At first he had the office of Aki no Kami, then he was promoted to be Harima no Kami, and in the third year of the same era he became Dazai no Dai Nai. In the 12th month of the first year of Heiji, at the time of the rebellion of Nabayori and Yashitomo, he beat down the rebels in the imperial cause, and the rewards bestowed on him for many meritorious deeds by the august kindness were very great. In the next year he received the senior third rank, and succeeded to the titles of Seisho Aifu no Kami and Kebai Ishi no Beto one after the other, and passing over the ranks of Chunegin and Dainegin, took rank as a minister of state. He did not even become minister of the left or right, but rose straight from Nadejin to be Dajidejin of the lower first rank. Though not a commander of armies, he went, armed and surrounded by retainers, and by special permission of the retired emperor, entered and departed from the court riding in state in ox, wagon, or palanquin, acting as one who holds alone the whole power of administration. Since it was the function of the Dajidejin to be a pattern and example of virtue to the whole country, to consider which was the right course in ruling, and to tranquilize the universe by his government, if such an one could not be found, the office was to be declared vacant, for except it were held by such an one, the office would surely be polluted. Now that this lay, monk of a governor should hold the heaven and the four seas in the hollow of his hand, verily there is no need for further speech. Now the reason for this great prosperity of the Heth, E.K., was said to be the favor of Kumano Gonjin. And this was the manner of it. When Kiyomori was yet only styled Aki no Kami, he went to worship at Kumano by ship from Ananatsu in Ise, and a large Suzuki fish sprang up into his vessel, as it is related in former times that a white fish leaped into the ship of Bu, king of Shu, and however it may have been he attributed it to the favor of the Gonjin. As we have said, he was on religious pilgrimage, so that he was observing the 10 prohibitions, abstaining from animal food and making purifications, yet departing from these. He cooked the fish himself and ate of it, and gave also to his children who were with him. And afterwards naught but good fortune attended him, and he at last became Dajidejin. His posterity, too, attained high office more quickly than a dragon ascends the clouds, greatly excelling in happiness the 9 generations of their ancestors. Chapter 4. Keimuro, or boy attendants. Now Prince Kiyomori, being overtaken by illness on the 11th day of the 11th month of Ninan, at the age of 51, retired from the world and took monk vows to save his life, assuming the religious name of Jakai. As the result of this, his sickness departed and he was cured, fulfilling the decree of destiny. Yet after his retirement from the world, he did not put an end to his luxurious living. People obeyed him as grass before the wind, and depended on him as the earth does on the rain that moistens it. If one speaks of the princes of the house of Rokuhara Dono, they were most noble and illustrious, and none might be considered equal to them. Moreover, as for the brother of the Nudo wife, Taira Dainegin Takatata Kaio, all those who did not belong to his house were to be considered people of no position, so that everyone was wishing to make alliance with him. From the manner of wearing the eboshi to the style of the crest on clothes, everything must be in the fashion of Rokuhara, so that everyone from one end of the land to the other studied it. Now, however wisely a king or ruler may govern, or in the case of the political actions of regent or prime minister, Sessho Kwampaku, it is a usual thing that certain worthless fellows will gather together to speak ill of him. But against this lay, priest in his prosperity, there was not even a casual breath of reviling. And for what reason? Even because, by the device of this monk regent, about 300 youths of from 14 to 16 years old, having purified themselves and polled their heads, wearing red robes, were everywhere patrolling the streets of the capital. And if there was anyone who spoke evil against the Taira house, and one of these chanced to hear it, straightway summoning to him his fellows, they would violently enter that man house, seize his treasures and household goods, and bring him bound to Rokuhara, so that none were found to open their mouth about the things they saw or knew. At the very name of the Kamuro of Rokuhara, everyone, both pedestrians and those who rode in carriages, made wide room and passed by on the other side. Even when entering or leaving the forbidden gate of the palace, it was not necessary to declare their name, for the officials of the city looked with averted eyes where they were concerned. Chapter 5. The Splendor of Kiyomori. Not only did Kiyomori himself live in splendor and luxury, but all his house likewise shared his prosperity. His eldest son Shijimori was Neidejin and Sadeisho. His second son Monomori was Chunegin and Yudeisho. His third son Tamamori was Chujo of the 3rd grade. His eldest grandson Kormori Shosho of the 4th grade. 16 of his house in all held offices of the higher grade, Kujio, while 30 had right of entry to court. The whole number of his family, who drew revenues from the provinces as military officials, were about 60 persons. All others appeared as of no account in the world. Since long ago in the era of Nara, no Mikado the office, p. 11 of Naki, no, Teisho was first instituted in the 5th year of Shingi, and Naki was changed to Kano in the 4th year of Daido. Only on 3 or 4 occasions have brothers occupied the offices of the right and left together. In the time of Montoku Tenno, on the left was Yashifusa as Sadeijin, no Sadeisho; on the right, Yashisuke as Dainegin no Yudeisho. They were the sons of Fuyatsugu, the retired Sadeijin. In the time of Shujo, in Seignori Ono no, Miyadono was minister of the left and Morisuke Kyujo Dono of the right. They were sons of Teijin Ko. In the time of Go, Rei, Zai, in Norimichi-o Nijo Dono was minister of the left and Yorimune Horikawa Dono of the right. They were the sons of the Kwampaku Maido. In the time of Nijo-in, Madafusa Matsu Dono was minister of the left, and Kanzane Tsuki, no, Wa Dono of the right. They were the sons of Hosoji Dono. All these were the sons of regents. Among the sons of ordinary people, there is no precedent. As for the grandson of a man whose presence at court was barely suffered, wearing the forbidden colors J4I and costume, going clothed in silk gauze and brocade, and holding the offices of Daijin and Teisho, his sons being at the same tune ministers of the left and right, it is indeed an extraordinary thing for future generations to hear of. Beside this, he had 8 daughters, all of whom severally achieved fortunes to be envied. One of them was to have become the wife of Shijimori no Kaio, Chunegin of the Emperor Sakurar Nachi, and was betrothed to him at the age of 8. But after the revolt of Heiji, the matter was altered, and she became the wife of the Sadeijin of Kwazan-in, to whom she bore many princes. Now this Shijimori Kaio was called the Chunegin of Sakurar Nachi for the following reason. Being a man of very delicate taste, he exceedingly loved the scenery of Mount Yashino, and planting their tiny cherry trees, he built a house in the midst of them and dwelt in it, so that people who went there in the spring of every year to see them gave him the nickname of Sakurar Nachi, Cherry Town. Being very grieved that these cherry blossoms should fall within 7 days after flowering, he prayed to Ten, Sho, Daijin, and they remained on the tree for a period of 3 times 7 days. The goddess displaying her august kindness owing to the great virtue of the emperor, and the flowers also requiting his affection by living on for 20 days. To resume, another of Kiyomori daughters became consort of the emperor and bore a prince at the age of 22. On this child attaining the rank of crown prince, she retired from the world and was known by the name of Ken Rei Kun In. Concerning this daughter of the lay priest-chancellor, since she has risen to the rank of mother of the emperor, there is no need of further description. Another daughter became the wife of the regent Rokujo. She it was who, during the reign of the retired Emperor Takakura, became imperial foster mother, and gained the title of Jun, San go by imperial edict. She went by the name of Shirakawa Den and was a personage of exceeding importance. Yet another daughter had become the wife of Fujinji Donam, another of Riaizai no Dainagan Ryubo no Kaio, and another of Shichijo Shuri no Teiyu Nobutaka no Kaio. One daughter also he had by a lady, in waiting of the shrine of Itsukashima in Aki, and she had the honor of becoming attendant on the retired Emperor Go, Shirakawa. Beside her also a palace, attendant at Kyujo no, in named Takiwa bore him a daughter who became lady, in waiting to Kawazen no Indono, and was styled Ro no, on kata unofficial empress. Now Nippon Akitsushima has but 66 provinces, and of these the domains of the Hei were 30, almost half the land. Beside these, the manors, rice fields and gardens that they possessed were without number. In the multiplicity of their gorgeous costumes they were resplendent as the flowers of the field. The noble and illustrious crowded before their gates like a throng in the marketplace. The gold of Yoshu, the jewels of Keishu, the damask of Gokun, the brocade of Shiyako of the 7 rarities, and the myriad treasures not one was lacking. For poetry and music, fishing and writing, perchance even the Mikado palaces were not more renowned. Chapter 6. Gio. Now not only did this priestly statesman hold the whole country in the hollow of his hand, but neither ashamed at the censure of the world, nor regarding the derision of the people, he indulged in the most surprising conduct. For example, in the capital there were 2 famous shurabyoshi who were sisters, named Gio and Jinio, both young girls and very skilled in their art. The elder, Gio, was beloved by Kiyomori, and her younger sister also was in high favor with everyone. So they were enabled to build a good house for their mother, who was granted a monthly income of 100 koku of rice, and 100 kwan in money by Kiyomori. Their family was consequently rich and honored, fortunate beyond the lot of most people. Now the origin of shurabyoshi in our country was in the reign of Toba, in when Shima, no, Chisai and Waka, no, Mi appeared as dancers. In the beginning, the shurabyoshi wore the suikin, or silk court robe, and tateboshi, or black court headdress, with a white dirk in their belt when they danced, and it was like the dancing of a man. But from the middle age, the headdress and sword were disused, and they danced only in the white suikin, hence they were called shurabyoshi. Of the capital, when they heard of the good fortune of Gio, there were some who hated her and some who were envious. Those who envied her said, "Ah, one, how fortunate is Gio Gozen! If we do even as she does, we too may become prosperous in like manner." So they added the syllable gi to their names to see if they too might not obtain good luck. Some called themselves Jiichi, Jiji, Jifuku, or Giroku. Those who hated her said, "Surely it is not a matter of the name or character with which it is written. Fortune is the result of disposition inherited from a previous existence," and so few of them took such a name. Now it came to pass that, 3 years afterwards, another skillful shurabyoshi appeared, and she was a maiden 16 years of age, born in the province of Kaga, and her name was Hadok. And when the people of the capital, both high and low, saw her, they said that although from of old times many shurabyoshi had been seen there, one so dexterous as she had not been beheld, and she too was in exceeding great favor with all. And in the course of time, Hadok Gozen said, "Though I have made sport for the whole empire, yet this great Taira minister who now is the source of all fortune and prosperity has not yet deigned to summon me. After the manner of entertainers, I will e'en go uninvited." So she forthwith proceeded to the palace in Nishi, Hachijo. On her arrival, a servant entered the presence of the minister and announced, "Hadok Gozen, now so famous in this city, is without." Then the lay priest grew very angry and replied, "How then? Do not these players attend only when they are called? Why is it that she has come unbidden? Whether she be called God or Buddha, Hadok, it is not suitable that she come here while Gio is present. Bid her depart at once." Hadok Gozen was already retiring at these unkind words when Gio said to the minister, "It is surely the usual custom that players should attend unbidden, and moreover it is because she is still young and innocent that she has thus intruded on you, so it will be most unkind to speak harshly and send her away. How greatly will she be shamed and distressed by it. As I myself have trodden the same path, I cannot but remember these things. If you will not deign to allow her to dance or to sing, yield, I pray you, so far as to call her back and receive her in audience. If you then dismiss her, it will be a favor indeed worthy of her deep gratitude." To this the priest minister answered, "Since you wish it to be so, I will see her and then dismiss her." And he sent a servant to call her. Hadok Gozen, having been thus harshly treated, was even then entering her carriage to return when she was summoned and turned back again. The minister met her and granted her an audience. Thus Hadok, though it seemed unlikely that she would gain an audience, yet through the kindness of Gio, who thus importuned for her, was not only able to enter the minister presence, but further it happened that he, wishing to hear her voice, directed that she should sing a song of the kind called Imeo. "To I," and thus she sang, "When I first enjoyed the sight of your bountiful presence, tea was like the evergreen pine, flourishing age after age. Like to the pond on whose rocks is basking the turtle thrice blessed, numberless storks, beside it happily preening their wings." P. 16. And those who heard it were greatly wondering at her skill and her beauty, and pressed her to repeat it even to 3 times. The lay priest also was greatly diverted and said, "Since you are so skillful at Imeo, you must also be able to dance well. We wish to see one of your dances." Then the drums were ordered to be beaten, and she danced forthwith. Now Hadok Gozen was renounced for the beauty of her hair and features, and her voice was no less exquisite. How then should she fail in the dance? So when she put forth all her skill and charm in dancing, Kiyomori was enraptured, and his heart turned wholly toward her. But when Hadok Gozen said to him, "Did I not present myself uninvited, and when almost rejected was I not only brought back by the entreaty of Gio Gozen? I pray thee grant me leave that I may return quickly." The lay monk by no means agreed to the proposal, and thinking that she was only embarrassed because of the presence of Gio, proposed to send Gio away. But Hadok Gozen answered, "How can this be? If we were to remain here both together, I should be most embarrassed, and if your excellency send away Gio Gozen and keep me here alone, how ashamed will she not feel in her heart? Indeed, it will be most painful to her. If you deign to think of me again in the future, I am always able to come at your call. I beg that today I may be allowed to retire." Kiyomori, seeing how the matter lay, straightway ordered Gio to leave the palace, and to that end sent a messenger 3 times. Although Gio had expected this thing from long before, she did not think that it would come to pass today or tomorrow. But as the Nudo continually repeated this unreasonable demand, there was nothing for her but to sweep her room clean and to go. Even those who meet under the shade of the same tree, or who greet each other by the riverside, since it is owing to relations in a previous existence, ever feel pain at parting with each other. How much more grievous a thing it is when 2 have been together in affection for the space of 3 years. So in regret and grief she shed unavailing tears. Thus, as it was a thing that must be, Gio went forth, but ere she went she wrote on the shoji this verse, thinking to bring perchance to remembrance the forgotten image of one who was gone. The fresh or fading flowers of the same moor, in autumn meet with the same hapless fate. Then riding in a carriage to the place where she lived, she cast herself down within the shoji and wept unceasingly. Her mother and her younger sister, seeing these things, asked many questions, but Gio would by no means give any answer, and only by inquiring of her maid did they come to know what had happened. Moreover, the 100 koku and 100 kwan of monthly allowance ceased. It was now the turn of the relations of Hadok Gozen to taste the enjoyment of this prosperity. Soon all the people of the capital heard of these matters, and wondered if it were true that Gio had been dismissed from the Nishi Hachijo Palace. There were some who went to see her, some who sent letters, and some who sent their servants. But Gion, since she had no inclination to amuse anyone now, did not even receive their letters, neither did she treat in any way with the messengers. She became more and more melancholy, and only shed unavailing tears. Thus the year ended, and the next spring came. Then the Nudo sent a messenger to Gion asking after her affairs and her health, and saying that as Hatok Gozen wished for someone to beguile her tedious hours, would she not come up to the palace to dance, or it might be sing Imeo, and thus cheer her. But Gion returned no answer, only she lay down and restrained her tears. Again the Nudo sent to know why she did not go, and why at least she did not answer. If she would not go, for what reason was it? For Jokai himself wished to confer with her. When her mother heard this, weeping bitterly, she thus admonished her, "Why at least do you not deign to pee? 18, send an answer, and why do you not go when thus rebuked?" At which Gion said, restraining her tears, "If I thought I ought to go, I would answer, but since I shall by no means go, I know not what answer I can give. As I do not go when I am thus summoned, he has somewhat to discuss with me," he says, "and what may this be but perchance to drive me from the city, or it may be to take my life. Beyond these two things no worse is possible. Even though one go forth from Miak, the way is not so sorrowful. Again, if one is called away from life, would one grudge this body so much?" Now when she did not feel it necessary to reply, her mother again admonished her, weeping, "Among those who dwell in this land, the commands of the Nudo ought not to be disobeyed, and moreover the relation of man and woman is from a former existence. It does not begin in this life. Even though the pledge be for 1,000 or 10,000 years, there are many that soon are parted, and though some think that it will be but for a little while, yet it may endure unto the end of life. The thing that has no certainty in this life of ours is the relation between man and woman. If you do not go now when you are summoned, it is not likely that you will be put to death, but certainly we shall be driven from Miyako. Even if you must leave the capital, you are both still young, and whatever space there may be between the rock and the tree it is easy to pass over. But I am old, and when weak and declining, to go and live in a strange place is sad even to think of. Oh, that I might be allowed to live and die in Miyako one, thus considering her filial duty both in this life and the next." Though Gion had determined that she would not go, not disobedient to her mother, she stood ready to set out, bathed in tears. Indeed, her feelings were very pitiable. As it would be lonely for her to go alone, her younger sister, Jinio, prepared to accompany her, with 2 other Shurabiyoshi beside, making in all a company of 4. In one carriage, they rode together and Karn to the Nishi, Hachijo Palace. On entering, however, she was not called to take the seat she had formerly occupied, a place much lower down being provided for her. "Alas one," thought she, "how shall this be? Although there is no fault in me, and although I have come hither, how am I distressed in being given a lower seat?" And not knowing what to do, she said nothing to anyone, but her tears fell plentifully from beneath the sleeve she pressed to her face. When Hatok Gozen saw this, she was greatly affected and said to Kiyomori, "It would have been better if you had not sent for her, but now let her be called up hither, or if not, suffer me to be dismissed and go away." The Nudo would not at all consider this and would not permit her to go away, but by and by he deigned to receive Gion and to greet her and inquire how she did, explaining that, as Hatok Gozen was lonely, it would be very pleasant if Gion would comfort her by dancing and singing Imeo. Gion replied, with difficulty suppressing her tears, "Indeed I came wishing not to disobey your august command," and sang the following verse of Imeo. "Even Buddha himself was once an ordinary person. I also at last like unto Buddha shall grow." Everything on this earth can partake of the nature of Buddha. Only to be estranged, this is painful indeed. Twice she sang it, weeping bitterly, and as she sang all the princes and courtiers of the He, K, and the high officers and samurai shed tears of admiration and sympathy. Kiyomori also acknowledged the justice of her complaint and frankly confessed it before them all. So when the dance was finished, He intimated that, as at present he had to attend to other matters, in future she should come without any especial summons to dance and sing and amuse Hatok. But Gion, repressing her tears, went forth without returning any answer. Thus Gion, not having intended to go, but thinking it cruel to disobey her mother, a second time suffered ignominious treatment. How pitiable it was indeed, one then thinking that if she remained in this world, she was always liable to meet with such afflictions. She determined to put an end to her life. Her sister Jinyo, hearing this, also made up her mind to die with her. Then their mother, being aware of their resolve, again with tears more gravely admonished them. If you have determined to do this, how greatly do I regret that I persuaded you to go, for in truth your chagrin is the cause of this. And if you indeed take your own life and your sister follow you, you my 2 daughters thus dying first, what profit is it to me your mother, who am aged and declining if I still live on? I too with you will cast away my life. Now to cause one mother, who has not yet attained the limit of her years to cast her life away, is it not even as one of the 5 great sins? 3L this life is but a temporary abiding place, shame upon shame even, what is it to be accounted? There is only sadness of heart in the long darkness of this world. If in this life we become attached to things, in the next life we must tread an evil way in sadness. Thus melted in tears she persuaded them. Gion, also weeping, admitted that she spoke truth. Doubtless it was as one of the 5 great sins that, because of regret at being put to shame, she should determine to put an end to her life. So it was that she gave up her intention of dying by her own hand. But since if she should stay in Miyako, she would still be liable to humiliation, Gion, at the age of only 21, deserted the capital and became a nun. In a mountain village in the recesses of Saga, building herself a butt of brushwood, she continually murmured her invocations to Buddha. When her p. 21 sister Jinyo perceived that she did thus, having made compact to die with her, how much more when the world has become so hateful shall she not at least accompany her sister? So at the age of 19, she changed her condition, and retiring from the world with her elder sister, devoted herself to prayers for their future happiness. Then their mother, seeing that she was left alone, aged, gray-haired, and feeble, since her 2 young daughters had forsaken the world, despairing of any future happiness, at the age of 45 shaved her head, earnestly giving herself up to prayer to Buddha. With her 2 daughters she sought a happier birth in future. Thus the spring passed by, and the summer grew late. The first winds of autumn began to blow. Gazing at the Milky Way where the lover stars J4 I meet in the heavens, when verses are accustomed to be traced on the leaves of the Kaji, watching the evening sun hide herself behind the ridge of the western hills, they liken the sun, set to the pure land of the west, see wondering when they should be reborn in that blessed region, and with all desire extinguished abide there forever. Thus they continued to meditate on their sad condition, their tears alone being inexhaustible. But one evening, when twilight was passing into darkness, they had shut their lattice door of bamboo and lighted their dimly burning lamp, and mother and daughters together were repeating the Nembutsu, when there came a knocking on the lattice. The 3 nuns were at once overcome by fear. One perchance it is some goblin who has come to disturb our prayers and make our Nembutsu of no avail. For what human being will approach such a brushwood, but as this by night to which none comes even by day? Such p. 22. A slight bamboo gate as this, even if we shut it, is easy to break through. Therefore let us open it without day. If indeed it be a pitiless one who will deprive us of life, relying on the true vow of Amida on whom we have called, if we ceaselessly repeat the Nembutsu, surely the Buddha and the attendant Bosatsu hearing our voice will come and meet us, leading us safely to the paradise of the West. Thus earnestly repeating the Nembutsu, admonishing each other's hearts and holding each the hand of the other, they opened wide the bamboo lattice. But behold, it was no evil spirit, but only Hatok Gozen that stood outside. While Ji was inquiring how Hatok Gozen had come to visit them, Whether in a dream or in her actual person, Hatok answered amid her tears. It is a strange thing to speak of what has happened, but if I speak it not, perhaps I may not be remembered. So I will relate all things, as they were from the beginning in detail. When first I came to the court uninvited and was about to go away disappointed after being dismissed, it was at your request that I was called back again. But a woman is a person not to be relied on, so that, not obeying my own conscience, I allowed you to be sent away and even stayed myself in your stead. Now, in consequence of this, I am overwhelmed with shame and conscience-stricken. When I saw you go away, I felt it to be through my fault and could not feel at all happy. Moreover, when I saw the lines written by your hand on the shoji, "In autumn meet with the same hapless fate," I thought it was indeed true. And then, when you were once more summoned, and when you recited the Ameo verse, the whole matter came to my mind again. But as I did not know where you were, I inquired and heard that you were together in a certain place, absorbed in prayer and meditation. Then indeed I felt envious of you, and having zealously begged my freedom since the Nudo has no further need of me, when I thought attentively about the matter, the glory of this Shaba, world is a dream of a dream, pleasure and prosperity, of what value are they? Very difficult it is to receive a body and obtain the mercy of the Buddha. If now I go down in sorrow to the underworld, I am unable to obtain rebirth in another life. Yea, how difficult will it be to rise up again? In a world of uncertainty for both old and young, how can we rely on our youth? The day when the breath enters our body or goes forth, we cannot know. Our life is more fleeting than gossamer or a flash of lightning. If we boast of the glory that endures for a moment, loss of happiness in the future life must be our portion. So this morning, stealing out unperceived, I have come hither as you see, putting away my ordinary dress to become a recluse. Thus, having changed any condition, I entreat that you will condescend to pardon my former trespass, that together, repeating the Nembutsu, we may sit on one lotus in paradise together. But if I cannot attain my desire, I will wander away whither I know not, falling down under some tree or on some mossy bank, and ever zealously repeating the Nembutsu, I will strive to attain rebirth in paradise. So pressing her sleeve to her face, she entreated them. Gio answered her, scarce withholding her tears. Not even in a dream did I imagine that you would think thus, while I lived according to the custom of this fleeting world. When I thought of the unhappiness of my condition, often I felt resentment at your conduct in spite of myself, thus suffering loss in this life and the next. But as now you have changed your condition, your former faults have passed away like the dew of morning. Now do I feel extreme happiness knowing that you will without doubt attain your desire and be reborn in bliss. If people may say that my having become a nun was a difficult thing, shall I too so consider it? It was because I hated this world and wished to put an end to my life that I did this. But that you, having no resentment or sorrow, and being now but 17 years old, should thus despise this world and so earnestly set your mind on the Pure Land, thinking only of the noble path. What a happy state of virtuous enlightenment is this indeed. I so the four of them retired from the world together, morning and evening, offering flowers and incense before Buddha shrine, and with one mind fervently pouring out their petitions, each one sooner or later obtaining her desire for rebirth in bliss. And in the register of the temple Ko, due built by the Ho, Go, Shirakawa, the honorable spirits of the four are found enshrined. Indeed, it is a very marvelous thing. Chapter 7. Twice an Empress. From ancient times to the present day, since the families of Gen and Hai were both called in to assist in the government, if there were any who, making light of the constitution of the land, did not obey the imperial laws, they were corrected by the other party, and thus any disorder was prevented. But after Tameyoshi was killed in Hogan and Yashitomo in Haiji, some of the Genji went into exile and others lost their lives, so that now only the He were flourishing and no one else dare raise his head, and it seemed as if this state of things would last forever. so that high and low were afraid, and no one felt at ease, but all were as though looking into a deep pool or walking on thin ice. And the relations between the emperor and the retired emperor, however estranged they might be, were remarkable for their extraordinary circumstances. According to the way of a degenerate age like this, people tried to anticipate each other in cunning. Though the emperor was continually contradicting the orders of the retired emperor, yet one thing especially there was that caused great astonishment to all, and many found fault with his majesty. It was as follows. The consort of the late retired Emperor Kano, who was entitled to be styled Taiko, Tai, Kagu, or grandmother of the emperor, was the daughter of Prince Kineyoshi the Yudejin of Oi, no Mikado. After the former emperor had predeceased her, she moved to the detached palace of Kano, called Kawahara, outside the court precincts, and about the period Ryaku, having come to the age of about 2 or 3 and 20, she was a little past her prime. But as she still had the reputation of being the first beauty in the land, the emperor fell deeply in love with her, and secretly ordered several of the bravest of his retainers to go to the detached palace, and privately sent love letters to her. She, however, did not presume to assent to his august suit. So straightway showing his affection openly, His Majesty deigned to intimate to the Yudejin family that he wished to bring her into the palace as official empress. Now, as this was a decree unprecedented in the country, the courtiers took counsel together about it, and all uttered different opinions. There is, it must be regretfully admitted, an example in a foreign country, in that of Soku Tenkogo of China, the consort of Taisho of Tu, and thus stepmother of the Emperor Ko, So, who after the death of Taisho became the consort of Koso. This having happened in a foreign country is a different matter, but in our country from the time of Jimmu Tenno, in all the 70 or more generations of mortal emperors, we have heard of no such thing as becoming empress for the second time. The courtiers having expressed their decision unanimously, the retired emperor JVL declared to the emperor that this thing must not be, but His Majesty answered, "The emperor has neither father nor mother. We sit on the jewel throne by merit of the 10 virtues. Jatwhy such a thing as this must be, entrusted to the imperial will." As the date of the official entry of the new empress was soon communicated by imperial edict, the retired emperor could do nothing more. When the lady heard it, she was overcome by tears. If, she said, I had not outlived my former lord, but at the beginning of the autumn of the period Kaiyu, Jew, I had terminated my due, like existence with his, or if I had become a nun and retired from the world, I should not have had to hear such unhappy tidings. But the minister, her father, spoke as follows. One who resists the emperor will is no more than a madman, already the imperial. Edict has been published, so there is nothing more to be said, only you must go quickly. If a prince should be born, you will be styled Kokubo, mother of the country, and I too shall become the grandfather of an emperor, truly an auspicious thing. If thus you will help your father, it will be indeed an extremely filial act. To these words the Empress Dowager made no answer. Somehow or other in the course of her writing practice, she had written this verse. Better by far it had been to have died when in my bereavement, than to live on and hand down a name unexampled like this. How this thing will be published in the world, a pitiful and sad case, will people consider it soon the day for the state entry into the palace arrived. The minister, her father, and the courtiers attendant on the emperor hastened on the ceremony of departure from the palace with all speed. But as she was very reluctant, evening came on and she had not yet started. Thus it was past midnight when she entered her carriage. After making her state entry into the palace, she was conducted into the Ryaikai den, and then straightway assisted in the morning ceremony of government administration. In the imperial apartments of the Shishin, Den J3I were the shoji painted with the figures of the Chinese sages In, Te, Ko, Rin, Gu, Se, Nan, Tai, Ko, Bo, Ro, Ku, Rai Sensei, Raisuke, and Shi Ba. There were also shoji with paintings of long-armed people, long-legged people, and horses. The Oni no Ma, or Devil Room, had Shoji painted with a lifelike figure of the Chinese General Rai. There is reason to suppose that the shoji of the seven sages were painted by Oiri no Kami Ono no Tofu. Moreover, is it not among the paintings of the shoji of the Sei, Ryo, Den Th. At there is to be seen one by Kanyaka of the Moon at down on the distant hills. When the retired Emperor Kano was a child, he had in the course of his play made some marks on the paper, and when his former consort looked, they were there all unchanged, and she thought fondly of his memory and made this verse. Ah, one, to think of the sorrows that note have fallen zip, oil me when I look at the moon, lining again I will the court. And during this second intimacy with the emperor, her unspeakable sadness affected her so much that she fell sick. Chapter 8. The quarrel about the Tablets. Now about the spring of the first year of man, his augustness the Mikado fell sick, and in the beginning of the p. 28 summer of the same year his disease became exceedingly severe. Now the daughter of the minister of the treasury, Lki no Kiyomori, had a son by his majesty who was 2 years old, and it was expected that he would be made crown prince. But on the 25th of June, scarcely had a decree been published appointing him crown prince, than he was immediately that same night placed on the throne, whereat everyone was much astonished. Those learned in such matters said that if investigation be made into the imperial line, Seiwa Tenno inherited the throne of Montoku Tenno at the age of 9. At this time Chu Jinko, Fujiwara Yashifusa, assisted his young lord in the government, just as in China Shu, Koden administered all the affairs of state in behalf of Sei-o, and this was the beginning of the office of Sessho, regent. Toba-in came to the throne at 5 and Kano-in at 3 years of age, but even if these be quoted, the present prince was only 2 years old. Still, even if without precedent, it is foolish to be disturbed about it. On the 27th of July of the same year, the retired emperor departed this life at the age of 22, like the untimely falling of a flower in bud. And within the jewel curtain and the brocade veil, all were choked with tears. That same night he was born to Funa, Okayama behind Rendai, no to the northeast of the temple of Ko, Ryu, Jai. After the August obsequies, many priests from the En, Ryaku, Jai temple of Hiei, San and the Ko, Fuku, Jai at Nara came to blows about the question of putting up their tablets. It was the custom after the death of an emperor that he should be borne to the place of burial, attended by the monks of the south and north capitals, Nara and Kyoto. And as they went in procession round the tomb, they put up the tablets of their respective temples. When there was no temple endowed by Shamu Tenno to dispute it, the tablet of Tu Dai Jai was put up, and next came that of Ko, Fuku, Jai founded by Tu I Tan, Kai Ko. Of the northern capital, opposite to that of Kafuku, Jai the tablet of En Ryaku Jai was to be put up. After that the tablet of En Jo, Jai, the foundation of Tem, Mu Tenno begun by Kisho Daishi. Kwanin Bo was attired in a hara maki or body armor, corded with black silk, and held a white-hilted naga, maki or short halberd, grasped in both hands. Sei Shi Bo was in armor laced with green thread and carried a huge takai in a black lacquered scabbard. Both of these ran up, and cutting down the tablet of En Ryaku, Jai broke it in pieces and threw them hither and thither. Then, shouting out the words of a song, which run thus: "How gaily flows the water, hark to the sound of the waterfall, even the sun in shining, by no means departs its rule." They disappeared again among the monks of the south capital. Chapter 9. Tile Conflagration, 8T Kiwamizu. Now the faction of En, Ryaku, Jai, in the matter of resisting the violence that had been done, very carefully watched for an occasion, but said no word. After the decease of the Mikado, everything, even the trees and flowers, was grief-stricken and of sorrowful appearance, and after this undignified wrangle, all, high and low, dispersed to the four quarters crestfallen and abashed. On the same 29th, Clay, at the hour of the horse, hearing that a great company of the priests of En, Ryaku, Jai was going clown to Kyoto. Bushi and Kebai Ishii went out to Nishi Sakamoto to prevent them. But in spite of this, they burst through, and a great tumult arose. Then the retired Emperor Go Shirakawa, how it happened is not certain, sent orders to the Ryaku Jai faction, and thinking that the Heth-ek were to be attacked, sent soldiers to the palace to strengthen all the guard houses for protection. The Heth-ek all gathered together at Rokuhara, and the retired emperor also betook himself thither in haste. Kiyomori was at that time only Dainagon no Yudeisho, and was in a very great state of agitation. Kamatsu Dono, wondering what all the matter was about, tried to pacify them, but there was much tumult and reviling among the soldiers. The monks of San did not go to Rokuhara, but casually proceeded to press on to Kiyomizu, where they burned all the temple buildings and monastery. This was to revenge the insult they had received on the night of the imperial funeral, since Kiyomizu was a branch temple of Fuku Jai. The day after their burning Kiyomizu, they wrote the text. By Kwanon aid the cave of fire will become a lake, and affixed it to the great gate. But the next day another tablet was substituted bearing the text, her wondrous power is without equal for all ages. When the crowd returned, the retired emperor came back hurriedly from Rokuhara, and Shijimori Kyo alone went to meet him. The chancellor, his father, did not go. This was out of precaution. When Shijimori returned his father, the Dainagon spoke thus to him. I am rather afraid of this visit of the retired emperor. He has been thinking of doing something or other, and sometimes he has even expressed it, and for that reason he has come, so I cannot altogether rid my mind of suspicion. You must not show any such suspicion either in word or deed, replied Shijimori. It is not a good thing to reveal one's thoughts to people. You must submit entirely to the will of the Ho-Oh. If you show sympathy, you may secure the protection of both Kami and Hadok. If you do thus, there will be no need to fear about your person. Indeed, Shijimori is most generous, said his father. When the Ho-Oh returned, those retainers who were most intimate with him remarked, what a strange thing is this that is said when the Ho-Oh has not the least idea of such a thing. Now a man of influence in the Ho-Oh palace named Seiko Hoshi was there at this time, and he came forward and said, Heaven alone cannot say anything, man must say it. The Heth-ek have now exceeding great power, and I think it is heaven will that someone should protest. But the others said one to another, this is not a good thing to say. Walls have ears. Take care, one, whispering in trepidation. Now as this year was a year of mourning, the ceremonies of Gokai, purification of the new emperor, and Daishui, presentation of new rice to the imperial ancestors, were not performed. Now Ken Shun Mon In, while yet she was called Higashino Ankata, had conceived a son by the Ho-Oh, and this prince was now 5 years old, and there was a rumor that he was to be nominated crown prince. So it was that, on the 24th day of the 12th month, he was suddenly given the title of Shino. On the advent of the new year, the era was changed to Nin. On the 8th clay of the 10th month of the same year, the prince who had been raised to be Shino the year before was proclaimed crown prince at Higashi Sanjo Palace. Thus the crown prince was an uncle of 6 years old, and the emperor was his nephew 3 years old, their relation and age being quite abnormal and improper. Yet in the second year of Quan, Ikijo had become emperor at the age of 7, and Sanjo crown prince at 11. It was, therefore, not without precedent. The emperor Rokuj had come to the B3 throne at 2 years old and was dethroned when barely 5, becoming a priest on the 19th day of the second month and taking the title of Shin, in before he had attained the age of Genpuku. Both in China and in our own country, this is the first time that such a thing has happened. On the 20th day of the 3rd month of the 3rd year of Nin, and the new emperor was enthroned in the Daikyoku-den. When this emperor came to the throne, the fortunes of the Heth-ek family stood at their zenith, for his mother Kenshin, In was the younger sister of Hachijono Nai, I Dono, the wife of the lay priest-chancellor, while Taira Dainagan Takatada was her elder brother and so the imperial uncle, so that he assume the position of regent in matters both within and without the court, all appointments of officials both in spring and autumn being in his hands alone. His position was just like that of Yakoku, Chu, while his younger sister Yakihi was the favorite of the Emperor of China. How very enviable was his prosperity and popularity. K responsible to Kiyomori, not as usual to the Emperor. Chapter 10. A collision of grandees. The Ho himself murmured in secret. From of old, there have been many who have subdued the enemies of the country, but never before have they been so rewarded. When Sadamori defeated Masakado, and when Yoriyoshi put down Sadato and Manido, when Yashihide conquered Takehira, Yashihide, and Ihira, a reward was given them. But it was nothing more than a domain, so that this arbitrary conduct in rewarding them is not according to reason. This is because the times are degenerate, and the principle of monarchic government is no longer observed. He could find no opportunity to utter any open reproof, however. The Heike, on the other hand, bore no special ill will to the imperial house, and hew many hawks at the quails and skylarks from morning till evening, returning to Rokuhara about twilight. Now just at this time, the Sessho Matafusa was proceeding from the palace of the Ho at Higashi, due to the imperial palace, and going to enter at the Yuho gate, he went southward from Higashi due, and turned to the east at Oi no Mikado, so that Tsukumori met him face to face between Oi no Mikado and I no Kuma. Immediately the minister retainers shouted peremptorily, "Who goes there? Dismount! Dismount! It is His Excellency who passes." But Tsukumori, being too proud and careless of his behavior, his retainers too being all youths of under 20 who understood little of courtesy, spite of it being a minister who passed, did not dismount according to custom, as etiquette demanded. On the contrary, they threatened to break through his train. As it was dark, perchance the minister retainers were not aware that it was Kiyomori grandson, or if they were, they made as if they were not. But anyhow they pulled Tsukumori and all his retainers from off their horses and put them to exceeding shame. Tsukumori could do nothing but make his way back to Rokalara and relate all these circumstances to his grandfather, the lay priest-chancellor. The Nudo was extremely wrath. "Even a minister," he said, "must respect my family, and it is a most hateful thing that he should insult such a young man. For a thing like this our house may be despised." But afterwards the Nudo, without saying anything to Komatsu Dono, collected about 60 men, led by Namba and Sino, all rustic samurai of exceeding bad manners who heeded nothing except the commands of the Nudo, and bade them go and wait for the minister when he went out on the 21st day, and cut off the front hair of his outriders and retainers as a revenge for the insult to Tsukumori. The samurai respectfully assented and went forth. The minister, never dreaming of such a thing, went out with more state than usual, owing to his having to stay in the apartments of the Sessho to fix the time for the emperor coming of age ceremonies. Jempuku, assuming the kamuri and reception of officials to be held next year. On this occasion he had to enter by the Teikenmen, and as he was going to the west of Naka, Mikado, at Inokuma near Horikawa, he met about 300 retainers of Rokuhara all armed to the teeth, who surrounded him on all sides with shouts of exultation. Then, chasing his retainers and outriders this way and that, they treated them with contumely and cut off their front hair. Among his 16 retainers, Take Moto, a retainer of the Udajin, also had his hair cut off. When they cut off the top knot of Takurando, Teiyu Takanori, they said, "You must not consider this as your own top knot, but as though it were your master." Then, poking the ends of their bows into the car, they broke the curtains, cut the harness and trappings off the oxen, and drove them hither and thither, finally returning to Rokuhara with shouts of glee, whereupon the Nudo praised them for carrying out his orders so well. But the two retainers who rode next to the minister car, Inaban Seizeukai and Toba Kyuneasa, Maro, though of quite low rank, were very shrewd fellows, and putting the car in order again, they brought their master to the palace of Naka, no, Mikado. He, wiping away his tears with the sleeves of his dress of ceremony, returned home again in a truly pitiful state. It is not necessary to speak of Kamatari and Fuhito of the Fujiwara house, but since the time of Yashifusa and Madatsun to this day, no such insult as this outrage of the He has ever been known to befall a Sessho Kwampaku. When Kamatsu Dono heard of it, he was greatly disturbed in his mind, and all the samurai who had taken part in it were dismissed from their posts. However strange a thing the Nudo ordered you to do, why did you tell me nothing of it? He said. This is Tsukamori's fault. The BJ Senden is fragrant even from the time when it has but 2 leaves. So even a boy of 12 or 13 years knows what courtesy is and ought to practice it. He is guilty of unfilial conduct in bringing the name of the Nudo into disrepute by such ill manners, and must bear he responsibility. So Shijimori removed him to Ise, no, Kuniya discipline. He was indeed a leader to be admired both by lord and vassal. Chapter XL, SHSHI no TANI. Owing to this incident, the Emperor Genpuku was postponed to the 25th day of the same month, and was fixed to take place at the palace of the retired emperor. And as the Sessho presence would be then required, he received an imperial communication appointing him Daijin on the 14th day. Soon after, on the 17th day, he paid a visit of thanks to the retired emperor, but still, the condition of things generally seemed unsettled. Thus this year ended, and the 3rd year of Ka-o began. In the 5th day of the 1st month, the Genpuku of the emperor took place, and on the 13th day he visited the retired emperor in state. The Ho-o and his consort received him. His Majesty looked splendid, indeed wearing the kamuri for the first time. As imperial consort, he received one of the daughters of the lay priest chancellor, and at the age of 15, he was adopted as stepson by the Ho-o. Now Maiawan in Den. Fujiwara Morinaga was still at this time Nadeijin no Sadaisho, and on his resigning this office, one Tokudaiji, no Dainagan Jite, no Kaio aspired to it in his stead. Kwazan in no Chunagan Kainmasa no Kaio also wished for it, and Aishin Dainagan Narachika no Kaio, the 3rd son of the late Naka no Mikado to Chunagan Kase no Kaio also greatly desired it. This Dainagan, being high in favor with the retired emperor, began to offer many prayers for it. He stationed 100 priests before the shrine of Hachiman to read the Ijdai, Hanya Kaio from beginning to end for 7 days. And while this was taking place, 3 doves flew forth from Odo, Kyama to the Takebana tree which was before Kura Daimyojin and fought one another to the death. Now doves are the well-known messengers of Hachiman Dai, Bisatsu, and in a shrine or temple, such a thing was an extraordinary portent. The Kengyo of that time, Kaiosei, Hoin by name, reported it to the imperial court. This was no ordinary matter, so the omens must be consulted, and a soothsayer among the Shinto priests, on being referred to spake thus. This is a portent of great weight, but it is not one that concerns the emperor but one of his subjects. Then the Dainagan, not at all perturbed thereat, since in the daytime people would see him, went out every night from his palace at Naka, no, Mikado Karasu, Maru to the shrine of Kamo on foot 7 nights in succession. Then the Dainagan, not at all afraid, set up an altar in a hollow cedar tree behind the sanctuary of the Yashiro of Kamo, and put there a saintly priest, and had prayers offered according to the Dakini rite for 100 days. Then it happened that suddenly the sky clouded over, and it thundered exceedingly, a thunderbolt striking the great cedar tree and setting fire to it, so that the shrine seemed in danger. All the priests ran together to put it out. Moreover, they wished to drive out the holy priest who was praying there, but he said, I intend to stay praying in this shrine for 100 days, and is now the 75th day, so I cannot depart now. And he did not move. This was reported by the shrine to the imperial palace, but the emperor bade them do nothing that was not in accordance with the law. Then the priests took white rods in their hands, and struck the holy priest on the neck, so that at last they drove him out from the street Ikijo to the southward. The gods do not accept discourtesy, and this Dainagon had fished to become Teisho, a thing quite unsuitable to his rank, hence this strange happening. Now at this time the appointment of officials was not in accordance with the will of the Ho-Oh, nor with that of the Sessho, Kwampaku, but lay solely in the power the He-Ik. Even Tokudeji Kwazan, did not get this nice, but Komatsu Dono Shijimori, the eldest son of the Nyudo, who was then Dainagon no Udaisho, changed over to Sadaisho, while the second son Monomori, who was Chunagon, passing over the heads of others his superiors, became Udaisho his stead. It is quite needless to say that Tokudeji Dono, who was a Dainagon of high lineage and of distinguished literary attainments and moreover head of his family, felt great chagrin at being thus passed over in favor of Monomori, who, as only second son of the He-Ik family. Although it was at first rumored that he would become a priest, Tokudeji Dono, wishing to see how affairs would turn it, merely resigned his office of Dainagon and went into retirement. Now the Shin Dainagon Narichika, no, Kaio would naturally come after Tokudeji Kwazan in, but how great was his wrath at the elevation of such a person as Monomori, second on of the He-Ik family. So he went to the length of saying that would attain his long-sought goal through the destruction of the He-Ik. His father had only been Chunagon when he was his age, but his youngest son had become Dainagon of the upper second rank and had received a great province as his fief, while his sons and retainers also basked in the imperial favor. What then was lacking to him that he should plan such a thing? It seems like the action of a demon. In the period of Heiji, when he was Echigo, no Chujo, he had taken the part of Nobuyori and ought properly to have lost his head then, but his neck was saved by the intercession of Komatsu Dono. Now, however, forgetting all gratitude for this, even when no one was his enemy, he was spending all his time in preparing weapons and collecting soldiers and practicing military activities to the exclusion of all else. Now Shishi no Tani on Higashi Yama, having Midora behind it, was a very fine strategic position, and there was the mountain seat of Shunkwan Sazu, so he was always repairing thither to plot the overthrow of the He-Ik. One evening the Ho-Oh went also, and with him went Joken, Hoin the son of the late Shonagon Nyudo Shinsai. During the evening banquet they talked about this matter, and Hoin said, "What a foolish thing, many people may overhear it and it will soon leak out and a crisis will ensue in the country." Then the Dainagon, changing his countenance, stood up suddenly and knocked over with the sleeve of his Karajinu, a jar, Heiji, that stood before the Ho-Oh. His Majesty asked what he meant by it. The Dainagon, returning to his seat, replied, "The overthrow of the Heishi." The Ho-Oh thereupon smiled with satisfaction and said, "Let someone advance and dance the Sarugaku." Hai Hangwen Yasuyori came forth and said, "There are too many jars Heiji here, and so we are all intoxicated." Shunkwan Sazu replied, "Then what shall we do with them?" "It is best to take off their necks," interjected Seiko Hoshi, as he took of the necks of the jars. Hoin, considering this all great folly, said little. However we consider it, it was a terrible thing. Now who are those who were in favor of it? Omi no Chujo Ryo, commonly called Naramasa, Hesshoji no Shujio Shunkwan Sazu, Yamashiro no Kami Modokane, Shikabu no Teiho Masatsuna, Hai Hangwen Yasuyori, So Hangwen Nabufusa, Shin Hai Hangwen Sukyuki. Among the retainers Tada, no, Kurando Yukitsuna was the foremost. Among the court guards, Hokumen, also many were affected. Chapter 12. The fight at the Ujiwa. Now this Hisshoji, no, Shujioi Shunkwan Sazu was the grandson of Kyogoku, no, Gen, Dainagon Gashan, no, Kaio, and the son of Kaidra Hoin Kwenga. The house of his grandfather, the Dainagon, was not a military one, but he, being a man of violent nature, did not easily let anyone pass before his house near the Sanjobo gate in Kyogoku, but usually would stand at the middle gate grinding his teeth in a menacing manner. Being therefore the grandson of such a formidable person, this Shunquin also, though a priest, had a pugnacious and proud nature, so that he was just the person to take part in such an unreasonable rebellion. Shin Dainagan Narachika no, Kaio, calling Tada no, Kurando Yukitsuna, appointed him leader of one of the forces, saying, "If you accomplish this affair successfully, you shall have as much as you wish of fief and domain." And he gave him 50 tan of white silk for bow bags as a gratuity. On the 5th day of the 3rd month of the 3rd year of an Genmayo in, Den became Dajidajan, and Kamatsu Dono, passing over Gen Dainagan Sadafusa, no, Kaio, became Neidejin, so that soon after there was a great banquet to congratulate him on becoming both Daijin and Teisho. The guest of honor was Oi, no, Mikado Udejin Tsunamun Ko. The Sadaijin ought to have taken the upper seat, but as his father was Uji, no, Akusafu, Fujiwara Yorinaga, there was some fear about such a precedent. There were no hoku, men imperial guards in ancient rhymes, but they were first established from the time of Shirakawa, and many of the Aifu obtained these posts. Tameyoshi and Morishige, who were in their youth pages called Inumaru and Senshimaru, and many other unimportant people also became hoku, men. During the time of Toba, Suyori and Tsunori, father and son, were both serving in the court, and though sometimes acting as courier from the O to the imperial court, always behaved in a manner suitable to their rank. But the hoku, men of this time, had too much power and did not respect Kujio and Denjibaido at all. Passing from lower hoku, men to upper, from that many were allowed to enter the court, and as they could achieve this, they became puffed up and even went so far as to join in this foolish rebellion. Among these were Morimitsu and Narakage, who served the late Shonagon Nudo Shinsai. Morimitsu was in the government office in Iwa, and Narakage was a man of the capital. He was born in a very low station, being a kande, warawa, or foot, soldier, or perhaps a kind of table page. As he was sagacious, he came to be employed by the Ho. Morimitsu became seaman, no, Joe, and Narakage human, no, Joe, then both of them became Yuki, no, Joe. Once when something happened to Shinsai, they both became priests, taking the titles of seaman, no, Nyodo Seiko, and human, no, Joe Seike. But still after this, they continued to hold the office of master of the storehouses to the Ho-O. This Seiko had a son Morotaka, who also became powerful and rose to be Keb-I Ishgo, I know Joe. Furthermore, on the 19th day of the 12th month of the 1st year of Gen, at the appointment of officials at Suina, year-end ceremony, he became Kaga no Kami. While he was on duty in his province of Kaga, he behaved in a lawless and barbarous manner, seizing the domains of shrines and temples and influential families, and doing always what was disorderly in everything. Now, even if there is no virtuous governor, peaceful government may still continue, but among his arbitrary actions, during the summer of the 2nd year of the same era, this governor Morotaka brought his younger brother Kondo Hangwin Moritsune to act as Mokyudai deputy. Now there was a certain mountain temple called Yugawa near the official residence of the governor. And just as the Mokyudai arrived from the capital, the priests happened to be bathing, whereupon he broke in among them, drove them off and bathed in their stead, driving away those of lower rank who were bathing near them, so that his horse might be washed in their place. Then the Mokyudai replied angrily, "The former Mokyudai were all fools, so the present one has no reason to follow their example. Obey the law one." But while he was speaking, the priests began to drive out his men, and they on their part tried to force their way in, so that one of the legs of the favorite horse of the Mokyudai Moritsune got broken in the struggle. Then with their weapons, they shot and hacked at each other for several hours. At length, when night began to fall, the Mokyudai, seeing that he could not overcome them, discreetly drew off his men. Afterwards, the officials of the province, gathering together about 1,000 men, came out to Yugawa and burnt down all the buildings of the monastery. Now Yugawa was a branch temple of Hakuzen, and thither the chief priests went to appeal for help, namely Kishaku, Gakumyo, Hidebo, Shachai, Gakuen, and Tosa no Juri. Hakuzin consisted of 3 shrines and 8 temples, and all of these came out together, a great multitude, about 2,000 men. On the 9th day of the 7th month of the same year in the evening, they made for the official residence of the Mokyudai Moritsyun. "Today is already past. Tomorrow we will fight," they said, and only went thus far that day. The dew-laden wind of autumn blew out the tough sleeves of their bow bands. The lightning flashing in the sky gleamed on the stars of their helmets. The Mokyudai, fearing that he could not hold his own, fled by night to Kyoto. At the hour of the hare, 6 a.m., the enemy rushed to the assault, fiercely shouting their war cry. From within the castle, there is no sound. When they send men to explore, they report that all have vanished. Then the multitude, seeing that attack is needless, draw off their forces, and, carrying with them the sacred emblem of the middle shrine of Hakuzin, go off to appeal to Heizan. At the hour of the horse, 12 noon, they brought it to Higashi Sakamoto on Heizan. From the northern provinces, the thunder rolled ceaselessly toward the capital. Snow fell and covered the land on the mountain and in the city. All was white even to the twigs of the evergreens on the mountains when they brought the sacred emblem to the shrine of Maroto. This shrine was the Mayori Gonjin of Hakuzin, the relation of the 2 gods being that of father and child. Though it was uncertain whether there would be any response from the deity, it was a great pleasure to the 2 gods to meet thus, greater even than that of B.L. Urashima, when he met his descendant of the 7th generation, or than that of the son of Buddha at meeting his yet unknown father at Ryosen. So this multitude of 3,000 priests from 7 shrines, each following close on the heel of the other, sleeve by sleeve continually chanted the holy sutras. It was indeed a sight that defied description. Then the priests of Heizan appealed to the emperor for the banishment of the Kokushi Kaga, no, Kami Morotaka, and the imprisonment of the Mokyudai Kondo Hangwin Moritsyun, but no answer was made to the appeal. Seeing this, some of the influential nobles of the court complained to one another, "Alas, why does not the emperor decide the affair quickly?" From old times, appeals from Heizan have been different from all others. The waters of Kamigawa, the dice of Sugoroku, and the monks of Heizan are things quite beyond my control. Quoth the Ho-O go Shirakawa. To which the Ho-O replied, "How difficult it is to resist the appeals of Heizan," and complied. Chapter XAI. The Vow. Formerly, on the 2nd day of the 3rd month of the 2nd year of Ka, Ho, Mino no, Kami Minamoto Yashitsuna-san had slain N.O., a veteran priest of Hiei, for depriving him of his newly obtained fief, whereupon the chief priest of Hiyoshi and the heads of Enryakuji, about 30 in all, came down with a crowd of retainers and presented a petition demanding satisfaction. On account of this, the Kwampaku of Go Nijo, Fujiwara Morimichi, ordered Yamato Jinii Nakatsukasa Gon, no, Sho Yoriharu to take measures of defense, with the result that his retainers shot arrows at the monks, killing 8 of them on the spot and wounding more than 10, so that the chief priest and the rest fled in all directions. Then the superior priests of Heizan flocked down in great numbers to report the matter to the emperor, but were met at Nishi, Sakamoto by samurai and Kebeishi, and driven back again. Therefore, while the emperor was hesitating about his decision, they brought the sacred emblem of Hiyoshi to the Kampanchudo and chanted through the 600 volumes of the Dai, Hanya Sutra before it to lay a curse on the Kwampaku of Go Nijo. Thereupon ensued a strange portent. Someone dreamed that the whirring sound of a kabureya was heard to proceed from the shrine of Hachioji and go over toward Kyoto. And the next day, when they opened the lattices of the mansion of the Kwampaku, they saw a branch of shikimi be jay-wet with dew as if it had just come from the mountain. And that night the Kwampaku was stricken with a sore disease because of the anger of the deity and took to his bed. His mother Dono no Kita no Mandakoro/Jin great grief went to the shrine of Hiyoshi, clothed scantily like a very low menial, and prayed for 7 days and nights, offering for the success of her petition these gifts to be dedicated to the god. 100 performances of the dance, p. 46, called Shiba Dengaku, 100 horse races, 100 courses of equestrian archery, 100 bouts of wrestling, 100 priests to chant the Neo Sutra, the same number to chant the Sutra of Yakushi, 100 statues of Yakushi half a hand high, one life-size figure of the same deity together with similar statues of Shaka and Amida. Beside this, she had in her heart 3 other vows, and though there was no reason for anyone to know what was in the depth of her mind, yet wonderful to relate, at the close of the 7th night at the shrine, it happened that a boy priest, who had come with many others from the remote province of Mutsu, died suddenly at midnight. When they carried him out from the shrine and offered prayers, to the amazement of the onlookers he stood up and danced, and after dancing for the space of about half an hour, the god entered into him and uttered this awe-inspiring oracle. Give ear, O ye people. For 7 days of this month, the mother of the Kwampaku has prayed in retirement before me. In her heart are 3 vows. She asks that the life of her son may be spared. If this be granted, first she will serve the shrine among the lowest mendicants for 1,000 days. I am moved with compassion that the mother of the Kwampaku, who is so great that she regards all the world as of no account, is so affected by her care for her son that, forgetting the squalor of these people, she deigns to serve the shrine among the lowest menials for 1,000 days. Secondly, she will build a corridor from the Hashidono of the main shrine to the shrine of Hachioji. How blessed a thing it is that such a corridor should be built, for I feel pity for the 3,000 priests who must go across to the shrine whether it rain or shine. In the third place, she will endow a Hakmondoko to be held in perpetuity every day. All these vows are by no means foolish, for though the first 2 might perhaps be foregone, the Hakmondoko is most desirable. Now the appeal that the priests made to the emperor was very proper, but no answer was given, only they were shot at and killed. Wherefore they came and called on me with tears, so that I was moved to compassion and felt that it was a thing I could never forget. Moreover, the arrows that were shot at them injured my body in its Buddha manifestation. See here whether I speak truth or falsehood. And the medium, doffing his clothing, displayed under his left armpit a hollow like the mouth of a cup. Then he continued, Indeed, this is so grievous to me that, however much she vows, I cannot prolong his life to the natural span. But if the Hakmondoko be endowed, I will allow him to live for 3 years longer. If this be thought too little, I can do no more. With this the god ceased and withdrew himself. Now the mother of the Kwampaku had not said anything to anyone about her vow, so that it never entered her mind that it could be known. And she was deeply impressed that the secret thoughts of her heart should thus become the subject of an oracle. And especially was she thankful that the life of her son should be prolonged for a day or even for half an hour. How much more that 3 years should be granted him. Thus, restraining her tears, she departed homeward. Afterwards she presented her son domain of Tanaka, no show in the province of Kai, to the shrine of Hachioji forever. And so it is that we hear that to the present day, the Hakmondoko is held every day without ceasing at the shrine of Hachioji. Thus the sickness of the Kwampaku of Go Nijo was healed, and he was restored whole as before to the great joy of his family. But alas, the 3 years flew by like a dream. And in the 21st day of the 6th month of the 2nd year of Cho, a boil broke out at the edge of his hair, so that he took to his bed. And on the 27th day of the same month, he passed away at the age of 38. Though he was brave, strong, minded, and valiant in his actions, when his illness became critical, he could not bear to die. Indeed, it was a sad case, and sadder too that he should die before his father before reaching 48, the age of 40. There is no reason why a father should die before his children, but even Buddha, the perfection of virtue, or the most enlightened Bisatsu have no power to change the decrees of life and death. A God who is really just and merciful cannot fail to punish for the good of mankind. Chapter XIV. Carrying down the sacred cars. p.m., they set out with the mikoshi or sacred cars of the 3 shrines of Juzenji, Maroto, and Hachioji at their head. While with them went the priests of the gods and Buddhas from Sagermatsu, Kaiurtsuzumi, Kamo no Kawara, Tadasu, Umatada, Yanagihara, Tohoku-in, and others with their monks and followers, an innumerable host. As they entered Ikijo from the western side, people wondered if the sun and moon had not fallen from heaven. Thereupon the emperor ordered the generals of the houses of Gen and Hai to secure the 4 quarters of the palace enclosure and to protect the city against the priestly multitude. Then Komatsu Neidejin Sadeisho Shijimori with about 3,000 horsemen secured the 3 gates of the palace called Yomai, Taken, and Yubo, while his younger brothers Munamori, Tamamori, and Shijihira, with his uncles Yorimori and Tsunemori, held the southwestern gates. Of the Genji, Gensemi Minamoto, Yorimasa the warden of the palace with his retainers the Watanabe father and son, and about 300 horsemen held the Nuidono palace at the north gate. This position being an extensive one and the troops few, they presented a very scattered appearance, so that the priests, perceiving this to be the weakest point in the defenses, determined to try and bring in their sacred emblem by the north gate. Then Yorimasa quickly leapt from his horse, and taking off his helmet and rinsing his mouth with water, made humble obeisance before the sacred emblem, all his 300 retainers likewise following his example, after which he sent Watanabe Chishichi Tano as an envoy to the priests. He was attired that day in a hitatare of light green, and body armor ornamented with cherry blossoms on a yellow ground, and wore a sword with mounts of red copper. In his quiver, he carried 24 arrows feathered with white, and under his arm was a bow lacquered in black and bound with red bands. Taking off his helmet, he slung it over his shoulder by the thong, and standing reverently before the sacred car, spoke thus: "Be silent a while, I pray you, and hear my message from Gensami Dono." The appeal of Heizan to the throne was certainly justified, and we also regret the slowness of the decision, so that not without reason do you bring hither your sacred car. Yorimasa, however, has but few men wherewith to hold this gate, and if you decide to force your way in at such an unguarded place, you will be a laughing stock to the children of the city, and it will be remembered to your shame in days to come. If we open the gate to you, we shall be disobedient to the imperial order, and if we try to defend it, I, who have always revered the god of Ayazan, can no longer follow the way of the warrior. Truly, either path is beset with difficulty. The eastern side is held in strong force by Komatsu Dono, so it is there that you ought to try and enter. On hearing this, the priests hesitated and were undecided as to what to do, when some youthful and worthless ones among them cried out, "Wherefore do ye thus delay? Push on through the gate." As many took up this cry, an aged priest called Setsu no Rishako, the wisest of all in the 3 halls, stood forth and said, "This request is very reasonable." And this theme embarrassed the verse makers very much, but Yorimasa won great admiration from the emperor by his famous improvisation. "Cherry boughs do not show mid the trees in the depths of the mountains, but at the time of bloom, beauteous the flowers appear. Do not then let us put to shame one who has merited the imperial admiration on an occasion like this. Let us carry in the sacred car elsewhere." Moved by this advice, thousands of the monks from front to rear shouted assent, and forthwith carrying the sacred car round to the eastern side, made to enter the palace through the Taken gate. Here a struggle ensued, for the samurai drew their bows and shot at them so that many arrows struck the sacred car of Juzenji, and some of the priests were killed, many of their followers being wounded, the noise of the shouts and groans ascending even to the Bonton paradise, ill while Kenro, Chijin, the mighty earth deity, was struck with consternation. Then the priestly bands, leaving their sacred cars behind at the gate, fled back lamenting to their temples. Chapter XV. The burning of the palace. That night the retired emperor gave orders to Kuroda, Sashobin Kanemitsu, that a council of the courtiers should be held immediately. At the time that they brought down the sacred cars before in the 4th month of the 4th year of Ho, and the emperor had ordered the Zashu to take it into the shrine of Sekizan, also in the 7th month of the 4th year of Ho. N. He had ordered the Beto of Jin to bring it into the shrine of Jin. Now, according to the precedent of Ho. N. He ordered Gondai Sazu Chokin, Beto of Jin, to bring it again to that shrine at nightfall, and this being done, the arrows that stuck in it were pulled out by the priests. From of old, reckoning from the period of Kayu, until now the priests of Heian have brought down their sacred car 6 times, but though every time the samurai were ordered to restrain them, arrows had never been shot until this occasion. The people of the capital were greatly terrified, fearing that the anger of the god would bring calamity on the city. On the 14th day at midnight, the monks of Heian again flocked down into the city. So the emperor, ordering his palanquin in the middle of the night, went to the retired emperor palace at Hajuji, Den, while the imperial consort and the other ladies of the palace went in their cars to some other palace. The Kwampaku and Dajo, Daijin and other inferior courtiers precipitately following them in a panic. The Neidejin Kamatsu Dono attended them wearing ordinary dress with a quiver of arrows on his back, his heir gone, no, Kiyomori going with him in ceremonial costume carrying a flat quiver. Both in the palace and in the city, high and low, rich and poor, all were in a state of confusion and tumult. Now at Heian 3,000 priests met in council, clamoring that as their sacred car had been shot at, and many of their company killed and wounded, they must burn all the temples from Amiya and Ninamiya to Kodo and Chudo as a protest against the indignity, and go forth and take up their abode on the mountain and more. At this point it appeared that the Ho-Oh wished to propose something with regard to the matter, and the senior priests of Heian in Kyoto went to ascend the mountain to inform the others. But these came down in great numbers as far as Nishi, Sakamoto, and drove them back again. On seeing this, Taketada begged them to listen quietly to what he had to say, and taking a small ink, stone, and paper from his bosom, he wrote a few words and gave it to them. What they read was this: "The lawless violence of the priests is the work of a devil. A righteous monarch restrains it by virtue of his enlightened birth." Abashed by this reproof, the monks forbore to lay hands on him, but admitting the truth of his statement with one accord, they all dispersed in silence to their cells and valleys. Thus did Taketada no Kaio win the admiration of everyone by calming the wrath of the 3,000 priests of the 3 halls by writing a few words on a piece of paper, and thus averting insult from the emperor and himself. The monks, too, who had hitherto been regarded as only wishing to stir up disorder, were now respected for their reasonable conduct. On the 20th day, an imperial mandate was issued through Kwazan in Gon Chunegan Tadachika, no Kaio the Jokai, that the Kokushi Kaga, no Kami Morotaka, should be dismissed and banished to Idota in Owari, and that his brother Kondo Hangwin Moritsyun should be imprisoned. Also on the 13th day, 6 samurai who had shot at the sacred car were also imprisoned. They were all retainers of Kamatsu Dono. On the evening of the 20th day, at the hour of the dog 8 p.m., a fire broke out at Higuchi Tomi, no Koji, and a great part of Kyoto was burned. A southeast wind was blowing strongly at the time, and the flames swept across the city diagonally like a great wheel and burned through to the south-west, the distance of from 3 to 5 cho, a very terrible sight deed. Gyuhei Shino Palace at Chigusa, the Kobai Palace at Kitano Tenjin, Ritsu Ise Palace at Himatsu, the Oni Palace, the Takamatsu Palace, the Kamui Palace, the Kannon Palace of Higashi Sanjo Fuyatsugu no Watodo, the Horikawa Palace of Fujiwara Madatsyun, beside 30 other palaces famous from ancient days. 16 palaces belonging to court nobles of the highest rank were burned, beside those of other courtiers and high officials without number. At last the fire reached the imperial palace, and starting from the Shujaku Gate, the Oten Gate, the Kaisho Gate, the Daikoku Den, the Buraku, the 8 offices of the palace administration and the office of records were all reduced to ashes in a moment. The annals of families and the documents of many generations, beside many treasures of great worth, were all burnt to cinders. No one could estimate the damage. Several hundred people were burnt to death, and cattle without number. Moreover, it was no ordinary event that there were some who dreamed of 2,000 or 3,000 great monkeys coming down from Heian with torches to set fire to the city as a punishment from the god of that place. The Dake Thokuden was burned for the first time in the age of Seiwa Tenno in the 18th year of Jokin. And on the 3rd day of the 1st month of the 19th year, the coronation ceremony of the Emperor Yosei took place in the Buraku Inn. On the 9th day of the 4th month of the 1st year of Gwankyo, they began to rebuild it, and it was finished on the 8th day of the 10th month of the 2nd year. In the reign of Go Ryizai, on the 26th day of the 2nd month of the 5th year of Tenki, it was again burned, and on the 14th day of the 8th month of the 4th year of Juryaku, they again began to rebuild it. But the Emperor Go Ryizai died before it was finished. In the reign of Go Sanjo, and on the 15th day of the 4th month of the 4th year of Enkyu, it was finished, and the imperial court removed to it, the literary men dedicating many compositions and the musicians making melody. As the present age was a degenerate one, and the strength of the country was exhausted, it has not yet been rebuilt. Tale of the Heike Monogatari, Volume 2. Volume 2. Chapter 1. Exile of Thezssu. On the 5th day of the 5th month of the 1st year of Jisho, the Tendai Zashu Mei, Dai Sojo was prohibited from attending court, and the Ainayo Rin Hanzan, the tutelary Buddha of the court, being brought back by an official of the Kurodo, Decoro. He was also deprived of his office of chaplain, in waiting. This was because the Kebiyashicho had been ordered to hand over the ringleader of the bands of priests, who had lately brought down the sacred car to the palace. Now the Ho-Oh had heard a slanderous tale from Seiko, Hoshi and his son, to the effect that the Zashu had some fiefs in Kaga, and that when the Kokushi Morotaka confiscated them, in his resentment at it, he had got the priests to make their petition so that it might trouble the court, and this made his majesty exceedingly angry so that he ordered him to be punished severely. So, as the Ho-Oh was thus ill disposed to him, Mei-un relinquished his seal of office and resigned his position. On the 11th day of the same month, Kakukai, Hoshino, the 7th son of Toba-in, was maidage Tendai Zashu. He was the pupil of Jio, Ken the Dai Sojo of Shorin-in. On the 12th day, in addition to depriving him of office and emoluments, 2 officers of the Kebiishi, Cho, were about to apply the examination by fire and water, putting a cover on the well and throwing water on the fire. Whereupon, fearing that the priests would again descend on them, the people of the city made a great outcry. On the 18th day, 13 courtiers below the Dajidaijin assembled in council to pronounce sentence on the ex-Zashu. It were better if we mitigate the sentence of exile. When he had thus spoken his opinion unreservedly, all the other courtiers agreed to his suggestion, but as the resentment of the Ho-Oh was so deep, in the end they passed the sentence of exile. Kiyomori Nudo also, when he heard of it, proceeded to visit the Ho-Oh to persuade him to remit the sentence. But the Ho-Oh, being indisposed with a cold and unable to see anyone, he had to return without effecting anything. In the case of a priest committing a crime, it is the custom that he should render up his orders and become a layman. And in accordance with this rule, the ex-Zashu took the civil title of Dainagen no Eiyu Fujii Matsuda. This Mei-un, we speak it with all reverence, was the son of Kuga no Dainagen Akimichi no Kaio, a descendant in the 6th generation of Gyuhei Shino, 7th son of Murakami Tano, and the most revered and virtuous ecclesiastic in the land, respected by both emperor and subject. He was also the Beto of Rokashoji, one of temples of Tennoji. Now the chief of the court diviners, Anio no Kami Abe no Yasuchika, had said of him, "It is incomprehensible to me that such a wise man as this should take the name of Mei-un, for thought the sun and moon are shining, Mefj above, yet unfortunately clouds-un are below." He became Zashu on the 20th day of the 2nd month of the 1st year of Nin, and was deposed on the 15th day of the 3rd month of the same year. It is related that, on opening the treasury of the Chudo as the custom was, among various other treasures there was a box about a foot long wrapped in white linen, and when this faultless Zashu opened it and looked therein, he found a roll of yellow paper on which Dengyo Daishi had written the names of all the Zashu who should be in time to come, and he read as far as his own name. But after that, reading no more, he rolled up the scroll again and put it back as it was before. It was very sax that even such a venerable priest, as he could not escape the results of the karma of his previous existence. On the 21st day, it was decided that he should be exiled to Izu. Many people said different things about the cause of it, but really it was owing to the slander of Seiko Hoshi and his son that this thing was done. As he was to be expelled from the capital immediately, the officials who were entrusted with this duty went to his residence at Shirakawa. The Zashu left his residence weeping and went to a place where the holy sutras were kept near Owataguchi. At Heian, they came to the conclusion that their opponents were none other than Seiko, Hoshi and his son, and writing their names on a paper, they put it under the left foot of Kompira Teisho, the first of the 12 Shinsho, in the Kampan, Chudo and cried aloud with many imprecations on the 12 Shinsho and the 700 Yasha to take away the life of Seiko, Hoshi and his son without delay. Only to hear them was a terrible thing. On the 23rd day, the Zashu went out from the hall of the sutras to his place of exile. How pitiful to behold one of the high rank of Dai Sojo being expelled by these officials, about to cross the eastern boundary on this his last day in the capital. When he came to the shore of Uchide near Otsu and saw the white eaves of the Manju rose shining in the sun, without taking a second glance, burying his face in his sleeve, he was choked with tears. There were many aged and virtuous priests at Heian, but among them Chokin. Hoin, who was only Sazu at that time, was the most renowned, and he felt so much regret that he went as far as Owazu to see him on his way. On taking leave of him there, the Zashu, out of gratitude, taught him the theory of concentration and the 3 contemplations, a doctrine that he had kept stored up in his mind for many years, and that was originally possessed by Shaka himself, and handed down through Memio the Bhikkhu of Benares and Age Ruju Basatsu of southern India. It is most praiseworthy that though our country is on the confines of the world, small and scattered like grains of millet, and was at this time most degenerate, yet Chokin, on possessing this doctrine, wept for joy as he returned to the capital. So all the priests of the mountain with their followers again came down to Higashi Sakamoto and held a council before Juzenji Gonjin, saying, "Let us go to Owazu and bring back our chief, but as he is guarded by the officials who have expelled him, it will not be so easy to take him away. Thus we have no other refuge but the deities of our mountain. If we are to rescue him without any untoward event, let us first obtain a favorable omen." To this end, the elder priests betook themselves vigorously to prayer. Now there was a youth of 18 named Tsuru Maru, a servant of Yo, and Rishi, a priest of Mudoji, who suddenly fell into a trance, both body and mind being in travail, so that the sweat ran from his limbs, for the Juzenji Gonjin had entered into him, and he spoke, saying, "Even though this is a degenerate age, how do they dare to send my priest into exile to a far country? My heart is cast down, therefore there is no reason why I should stop at the foot of this mountain from henceforth." And he pressed his sleeves to his eyes and wept. Astonished at this portent, the priestly multitude exclaimed, "If this be indeed the oracle of Juzenji Gonjin, let this be a sign. Restore each of these to its rightful owner." And 400 or 500 of the elder priests threw down the rosaries, which they held in their hands, onto the veranda of the shrine of Juzenji Gonjin. Then the possessed youth, running round and gathering them up, without an error distributed them each to the one who owned it. Then all the priests wrung their hands and wept for joy at this miracle that the deity had manifested anew. "Let us go and take him from them," they shouted as they rose up and swept on like a great cloud, while on the shore road towards Shiga and Karasaki another multitude came trooping, and yet another took ship on the lake toward Yamada and Yabes. When they saw this, the officers who were charged with the expulsion of the Zashu scattered and fled in all directions. Then advancing to the edge of the temple veranda, he addressed them thus: "Since I left the princely mansion of my father and entered the school of the Tendai sect, I have studied widely the ordinances thereof, learning the doctrines of both Tendai and Shingon, being only concerned for the prosperity of Heian, not neglecting to pray for the welfare of the nation, and deeply considering the education of the monks. To this, the deities of both Koya and Heian will testify. There is no fault on my part, but innocent of any crime, I have received this heavy sentence of exile. I have no enmity toward either the world or man or gods or Buddhas. Indeed, for your good intention in coming thus far to see me, my gratitude is past expressing." And he wrung the sleeves of his garment wet with tears. The priests also wept into the sleeves of their armor, but on their bringing up the palanquin and urging him to enter it, the Zashu refused and continued: "Formerly I was the chief of 3,000 priests, but now I have become a mere exile. How shall I be carried on the shoulders of such noble disciples and deeply learned monks?" p. 60. Even if I come back again, I ought to walk shod in straw sandals like any common priest. Now there was a certain disorderly priest of the Sado Hall named Kaijo, no Ajuri Yuke, a huge fellow who stood 7 feet high, dressed in armor of black leather and metal loosely laced, with very long thigh pieces. Removing his helmet, he gave it to one of his fellow priests, and leaning on the white handle of his halberd and pushing aside the crowd on either side, he stood before the Zashu. Glaring at him with wide-open eyes for a while, he said peremptorily, "It is because you are of such a mind that this misfortune has befallen you. Now get in immediately." Then the Zashu, in fear of him, straightway entered the palanquin. In their joy at recovering him, only the noblest of the priests, his disciples, and none of those of low rank took turns in carrying his chair. But UK continued without being relieved, going on in front, gripping both the pole of the palanquin and the handle of his halberd with such vigor that it seemed they would break asunder. Thus they traversed the eastern slope of the mountain, as though they marching over level ground. Putting down the chair in the court of Daikoto, they once more held a confabulation, debating thus: "Now we have gone even to Awazu and brought back our Zashu, but how can we appoint as our head one who is under sentence of exile by the emperor?" Then Kaijobo Ajeri Yuke again came forward and said, "This our mountain is a holy place unequaled in Nippon, a place of holy doctrine that protects our nation, the power of whose gods is very mighty. Buddha is equal in authority to the emperor, so that men do not hold in light esteem the opinion of even the lowest priest. How much more then that of the most noble chief of 3,000 priests, the holy and virtuous head of our whole mountain? That he should be punished without fault, does it not call for the wrath both of Heian and the capital that we should thus be made a derision to Kafukuji and Onjoji? How sad to lose the greatest master, p. 61 of the law of Tendai and Shingon, and that our students should for long have to neglect their studies. Make me the leader of your hosts, and though I be imprisoned or exiled or lose my head, it will be a good memorial in this world and the next." Thus he spoke, weeping vehemently, and the assembled thousands assented to his words. Since this time UK was called TKA Mi, Bo, the wrathful priest, and his pupil Ike Rishi the people also nicknamed Ko, Ikame Bo, the lesser wrathful priest. Chapter 2. Akikeo Ejerai. Now the priests brought their Zashu to Mayo, Ko, in which is in the southern valley of the Tatu or eastern pagoda. Perchance even a Ganj, manifestation of Buddha, cannot avoid a chance misfortune like his. Of old time in China, Ikko Ajuri, court chaplain to the Emperor Genso of the Ta dynasty, was raised to favor and confidence by the Empress Yo, Kai, Hai, and as both then and now in great and small countries people will babble, he fell under suspicion, and even though it was groundless, he was exiled to the land of Kara. To this land there were 3 roads, that called Rinchai, Du, the imperial road, that called Yuchi, due by which the common people traveled, and that called Enketsu, due dark cave way by which criminals traveled. So this Ikko Ajuri, having committed a great crime, had to go by the Enketsu, due, and for 7 days and nights without seeing the sun or moon he traveled on it. As it was thus dark and there was no inhabitant, he lost his way, wandering on the shore of a lake and going through a deeply wooded mountain, while only the voice of a bird was heard in a watery ravine. While he was weeping there so that his garments were wet as moss, a god took pity on him, exiled without cause, and delivered him by showing 9 luminaries in the sky. Then Ikko, biting a finger of his left hand, drew the 9 luminaries on his left sleeve with the blood. So it is that in both China and Japan the Enmandara of 9 luminaries is the chief object of worship of the Shingon Shu. Chapter 3. Execution of Asayakeo. Thus he spoke, unaware of the prayers for his own destruction, or of the appearance of the god of the mountain, and confusing the mind of the emperor. A subject who advises the emperor falsely stirs up confusion in the country. This is a true saying. Even though one tries to grow many orchids, the wind of autumn will destroy them, and even when rulers desire to be clear in their minds, a lying minister will speak thus to darken their counsel. But still, no decision was made concerning his sentence of exile. Thus the long-cherished plan of the Shin Dainagon for the overthrow of the Heike was delayed owing to the riotous conduct of Heizan. Some deliberation and preparations had been 63 made, but they were only pretense, and as it seemed that the plot was not likely to succeed, Tada Kurando Yukitsuna, who had been entrusted with the arrangements, thinking apparently that it was no use going further, used the linen which had been presented to him as material for bow cases to make hitatere and katabira for his retainers. Then, on meditating over the affair and seeing the prosperity of the Heike, it seemed a very difficult thing to overthrow them. And if the matter chanced to leak out, he himself would be the first to be executed. So he thought it would be better to betray it before anyone else could do so, and thus save his own life. So on the 29th day, about midnight, he went to the mansion of the Nudo at Nishi Hachijo, saying that he had important business. As Yukitsuna was not accustomed to visit him, the Nudo, wondering why he had come, sent Hangwin Morakuni to inquire. "I understand that the Ho-Oh has a plan to attack Heizan," replied Kiyomori carelessly. Then Yukitsuna, drawing nearer, whispered to him, "That is not the reason. It is against your house that they make these preparations." "Has the Ho-Oh any knowledge of it?" asked the Nudo. "Without doubt he knows about it. It is with his authority that Shitsuji no Beto Narichika no Kaio is collecting his forces." And he went on to explain what Yasuyori, Shunquin, and Seiko had done, after which he retired and the Nudo called out loudly to summon his samurai. Yukitsuna, having said what had better have been left unsaid, fearing that he might be called on to prove his words, girded up his hakama and fled from the precincts though no one pursued him, feeling like one who is afraid of being caught in the fire. p. 64 that he has kindled. Then the Nudo, calling Chikugo no Kami Sadyoshi, cried out, "The capital is full of traitors who plot to overthrow our house. Make haste and report it to all our clan and assemble the retainers quickly. Let all hear." Soon Udaisho Munamori, Sami Chujo Tamamori, Tu no, Chujo Shaijihira, Sama no, Kami Yukimori, and others of their kinsmen came up in full armor with their bows on their backs, together with a multitude of samurai innumerable. That night there assembled at the Nudo mansion of Nishi Hachijo about 6,000 or 7,000 armed men. Sukanari immediately hastened to the palace, and, calling Nobunari, gave him the message. He, turning pale, straightway went and told the someone has revealed the secret, he remarked. But even so, how did it come out, I wonder? And he gave no direct answer. Sukanari, immediately returning, reported this to his master, at which the Nudo replied that evidently Yukitsuna had spoken the truth, and that if he had not revealed the plot, their lives would have been in danger. Then he gave orders to Chikugo, no Kami Sadyoshi, and Hida, no Kami Sadia, to arrest all who were implicated. So, taking bands of 200 or 300 horsemen, they went hither and thither and seized them all. He also sent foot soldiers to the mansion of the Shin Dainagon at Naka, no, Mikado Karasu Maru, with orders that he should come immediately. The Dainagon, thinking that it was not anything concerning himself, but that Kiyomori intended to forbid the Ho, to attack Hiezan, though as the latter was much enraged it would be of no avail, gracefully donned a costume of delicate material and mounted into an elegant car, accompanied by 3 of 4 retainers, his servants and ox drivers being more ceremonial than usual, only to find out soon after that it was for the last time. When they came near to Nishi Hachijo for 4 or 5 cho, they saw nothing but armed men, and he felt a little anxious, wondering why there were so many. But when they arrived at the front gate and were bidden to enter, they saw that the inside also was filled with dense masses of soldiers. At the middle gate many fierce-looking warriors were standing, who, when they saw the Dainagon enter, cried out, "Shall we seize him and bind him?" Whereupon the Nudo, looking out from behind a curtain, replied, "There is no necessity." So 14 or 15 soldiers, surrounding him on all sides and seizing him by the hand, pulled him onto the veranda and shut him into a small apartment. The Dainakron, like one in a dream, did not comprehend what was happening. The samurai who were with him, separated by overwhelming forces, were scattered in different directions, and the servants and ox drivers in consternation abandoned the ox car and took to flight. Then Omi no Chujo Nudo Renjo, Hose Shoji no, Shujio Shunkwan Sazu, Yamashiro no Kami Modikane, Shikabu no Teiyu Masetsuna, Hai Hangwin Yasuyori, So Hangwin Nobufusa, and Shin Hai Hangwin Sukyuki were also arrested and brought in. Seiko, Hoshi, on hearing this, fearing that it was a matter concerning him also, rode in haste to the palace of the Ho-Oh. On the way, however, meeting some soldiers from Rokuhara, they accosted him, saying, "You are required at Rokuhara, haste thither at once." But he replied that he had business at the palace of the Ho-Oh and afterwards would do as they ordered. "What is it that you have to say to him, O most worthless of priests?" They answered as they dragged him from his horse and carried him bound to Rokuhara. As he was the mainstay of the plot from the beginning, they bound him firmly and put him in ward in a certain courtyard. Then Kiyomori, standing on the veranda above, glared at him fiercely for a while and then exclaimed, "This is the way I treat a worthless fellow like you who makes plots against M. Bring him here." So they brought him to the edge of the veranda, and the Nudo trampled on his face with his footgear. "You, who were at first a courtier of the lowest rank and were advanced by the favor of the Ho-Oh to a high office that you did not deserve, you and your son have behaved outrageously and procured the exile of the Tendai Zashu, though he was guilty of no offense. And not only that, but you have taken part in a plot against me and my house. Now confess the whole thing at once and tell the truth." But Seiko, being by nature a bold fellow, showed no fear, and recovering himself and not at all taken aback, replied with a laugh, "As I served as a confidential retainer of the Ho-Oh household, I cannot say I took no part in the raising of forces by the Shitsuji, no, Beto Narichika, no, Kaio. Indeed, I did have a hand in it. Why do you say things that I cannot overlook? Before other people, it does not matter, but in my hearing you shall not speak thus. And when you were called Hayo, no, Suk of the 4th rank, people said it was too high a rank for you, so it is certainly too much that, being of the line of a men who had not the right of going to court, you have raised yourself to be Dajo Daijin. From old time, there is precedent for military families like mine to obtain fiefs and hold positions in the Kebiishi. That is not promotion beyond one position." Thus he spoke out boldly without fear, and the Nudo could neither restrain his anger nor could he utter a word for rage. After a while he managed to ejaculate, "Do not take Lei's head off now. Examine him well, aid, find out all the plot. Then away with him to the river and behead him." Thereupon Matsura, no, Taro Shichitoshi applied torture by squeezing his arms and legs. Seiko did not resist at all, and the torture was very severe. After they had written his confession on 4 or 5 sheets of paper, his mouth was split open by order of Kiyomori, and he was executed at Shujaku on the west side of Gojo. His eldest son Kami Morotaka, who had been dismissed from his office and banished to Idota in Oiri, was now ordered to be executed also by Gunshi Korsu of that province. His younger son, Kondo Hangwin Moritsune, Vas also taken out of prison and put to death. The third son, Seaman, Joe Morohira, together with 3 of his retainers, lost his head also. These men had all been raised up from humble positions and interfered in matters in which they had no right to meddle, procuring the exile of the innocent Tendai Zashu, and thus they met their fate and were overtaken by retribution as a punishment from the deity of Hiazan. Chapter 4. The Lesser Admonition. The Shin Dainagon, being thus confined in a small chamber, was in such a state of terror that a cold sweat broke out all over him, and he thought to himself, this is the result of someone letting out our secret. Who can it be that has turned informer? It must be one of the Ho-O palace guards. While he thus continued turning over everything anxiously in Iris' mind, he heard a loud footfall approaching from behind and thought it was the soldiers coming to put him to death. It was, however, the Nudo himself, who came tramping loudly over the wooden floor and abruptly opened the shoji of the apartment. Dressed in a somewhat short costume of white silk and striding long in an I-2O, Kuchai, Hakama, wearing a sword without any decora, p. 68, Tian loosened in its scabbard, Kiyomori, in wrathful mien, glared fiercely for a space at the Dainagon. You ought to have been executed at the time of the revolution of Heiji, but Shijimori saved your neck. That kindness you have forgotten. What is your grievance that you wish to overthrow our house? When Sadyoshi immediately appeared, bring the confession that fellow Seiko has made, ordered the Nudo, and on its being produced read it through loudly several times to the Dainagon. Now, you villain, what have you to say to that? He shouted, as, flinging the document into his face, he slammed the shoji to and went out. His anger was not yet appeased, however, so he called to Tsunito and Kanyasu and bade them throw the Dainagon down into the courtyard. At this they demurred, saying that Komatsu Dono might not approve of such treatment. What? Demanded Kiyomori. Do you regard the orders of Shijimori and pay no attention to mine? It seems I can do no more. But they, thinking it inadvisable not to obey after all, seized the Dainagon by both his hands and threw him down into the courtyard. Then the Nudo, exulting in his revenge, ordered them to throw him to the ground and beat him till he cried out, whereupon the two, wishing to spare him, whispered to the Dainagon ear that he should cry out quickly, and so threw him down, and he cried out several times. It looked just like a scene in the I3J Mado, when those who have sinned in this Shaba world are tortured by the devils after being weighed in the balance, and their misdeeds examined in the mirror of clear crystal. Thus in China also Shou and Han were thrown into prison, and Kan and Ho were slain with their families to the 3rd generation. Choso also was executed, and Shugi was punished. Of these men, the first 4 were all loyal subjects of the Emperor Koso, but through the slanders of worthless fellows, they were innocently disgraced. On this misfortune happening to the Shin, Dainagon, his first thought was about the fate of his son Tamba, Shosho Naritsune, and the other younger children. As it was now the 6th month, it was extremely hot, and as he could not loosen his dress of ceremony, his condition became unbearable, so that he gasped for breath and sat bathed in tears and sweat. Though he thought that Komatsu Dono would not forsake him, there was none to bring him any tidings. After some hours had passed, Komatsu Dono, undisturbed as usual either by good or ill, arrived at Rokuhara with his eldest son gone, Tsukomori riding at the back of his car. He had 4 or 5 guards in attendance, and 2 or 3 retainers, but no military escort, and his bearing was entirely calm and unmoved. The Nudo and his family were somewhat surprised to see him come thus, and on his alighting at the middle gate, Sadyoshi came forward and said, Why do you go without an armed escort, seeing that the times are so critical? Critical is a word that should only be used of the affairs of the nation, replied the minister. We cannot use it of our own private quarrels. On hearing this, the crowd of samurai who stood by armed to the teeth looked somewhat uncomfortable. Shijimori then proceeded to search through many rooms to find where the Dainagon had been confined, and at last came to a shoji over which was an arrangement of beams and ropes like a spider web. Ordering these to be removed, he discovered the Dainagon within. He, sitting choked with tears, did not at first look up, but on being greeted kindly by Shijimori, his face lighted up like that of a sinner in hell who sees the approach of Jizo Basatsu. I know not what is the reason, he said, but this morning I have fallen into this evil plight, as however you knave deign to come to me, I am not without hope that you will be able to deliver me. When in the period of Heiji I was about to be executed, it was your compassion that saved my life, and since then I have advanced to be Dainagon and obtained the second court rank, being scarcely more than 40 years old, although I can never repay your kindness. I pray you to save my worthless life once more. Then seeking out his father Kiyomori, he addressed him thus. I pray you consider most carefully what you do in putting the Dainagon to death, for since his ancestor Teiyu Akisu, who was courtier of the retired Emperor Shirakawa, he has been the only one of his family to be promoted to Dainagon of the upper second rank. He is, besides, extremely high in favor with his master the Ho-Oh, wherefore it is not good to put him to death. It will be quite sufficient to expel him from the capital. Kitano Tenjin, owing to the slander of the minister Takahira, spent his remaining days in sorrow and exile across the Western Sea, and the minister Nishino Miya, owing to the traduction of Tada no Manchu, spent his days in bitterness amid the misty mountains of the Sanyo, both being innocent of any crime. All this was luring the righteous era of En, Kai, and tradition calls it the injustice of the Mikado of En, Wa. So if even in great antiquity such things happened, how much more in an evil age like this? Even a wise ruler makes mistakes. How much more an ordinary person, since you have already arrested him? There is no more cause for anxiety, even if you spare his life. The Chinese sages have said, give the benefit to the accused where guilt is in question, but give him the credit where merit is in question. Moreover, to consider another side of the matter, I have married the younger sister of this Dainagon, while my son Kiyomori has married his daughter, and being bound by such intimate ties, perhaps you may think that is the reason I speak thus. That, however, is not the case, but it is for the sake of the emperor, of our country, and of the time that I entreat you. And though people may have said in old times if the ringleaders were executed, rebels would cease out of the land, yet, only 2 years after Hojin there was the rebellion of Heiji, when the body of Shinsei, which had been buried, was dug up, and the head cut off and exposed. Truly a salutary example that the deed which he did in Hojin should so soon be paid back on his own head. Now as this man is not a rebel against the throne, you ought to hesitate to put him to death. So the Nudo, admitting the reasonableness of this speech, gave up the intention of executing him. Then Shijimori went out to the middle gate and thus addressed the samurai. You must by no means put the Dainagon to death, even if you are ordered to do so. For when at the Dainagon mansion, many retainers and ladies were left. But they were too apprehensive even to take any food, and did not so much as shut the gates. And though there were many horses in the stables, there was none who gave them any food. Formerly, from early dawn, there would be rows of carriages at the gate, and innumerable guests coming to spend the day in dancing and merriment, as though the cares of life did not exist, while their inferiors who approached them dared not so much as raise their voices in their presence. This haughty state continued until yesterday, but in one short night all was changed. How are the mighty brought lol now can we appreciate the saying of I 6 go, show ko, pain comes when pleasure is at its height. Chapter 5. The SHOSHO is put in charge of the SAISHO. Tamba, no, Shosho Naritsune stayed that night in the Hojujiden, the palace of the retired emperor, and did not go out at all. The retainers of the Dainagon hurriedly rode up to this palace and summoned him forth, and on their relating the arrest of his father to him, he replied, "Why did not the Seisho, chief minister, inform me of an affair like this until now?" But hardly had he finished speaking when a messenger arrived from the Seisho. On hearing this, the Shosho summoned the ladies in waiting who always attended him and said, "Last night I heard some uproar outside and thought it might be the priests of the mountain coming down into the city, but it seems to be something connected with my affairs. As the Dainagon is to be put to death this evening, I also shall be included in the same condemnation. I should like to visit the Ho-Oh once more, but as this misfortune has happened to me, I must refrain." The ladies then went to the Ho-Oh and reported the matter to him. The Ho-Oh, understanding from Kiyomori messenger that morning that the secret plot had been revealed, intimated that he wished the Shosho to visit him, whereupon the latter did so. The Ho-Oh, weeping, said nothing, while the Shosho, also choked by tears, was silent likewise. So after a short space, he retired from the presence, and the Ho-Oh saw him off at some distance, saying, "How sad is this degenerate angel, this is the last time I shall see him." And he could not restrain his tears. When the Shosho retired from the presence of the Ho-Oh, all the courtiers and court ladies were much grieved at parting with him, pulling him by the sleeves and shedding tears, so that no one was dry-eyed. When he arrived at the house of his father, in-law, the Seisho found that his wife was just on the eve of her confinement, and that, as the result of the shock of the morning upset, it seemed as if she were about to expire. Now, since his departure from the Ho-Oh palace, he had not ceased to weep, and now, seeing the condition of his wife, he gave way completely to his despondency. Also, the milk nurse of the Shosho, named Rokujo, came to him in tears and said, "Since I came here as nurse, I have brought up my lord until now. And since I brought him up, I did not grieve at my increasing years, but only rejoiced seeing my lord grow up. And though not yet quite full grown, has this year attained the age of 21. Never for even half an hour have I been parted from him. When he went to the palace of the Ho-Oh, I was always anxious if he came back late. Gad, now at last, what misfortune has he met with?" Then the Shosho tried to comfort her, assuring her that as the Seisho was there, he would most probably escape with his life. But she would not be consoled, and gave herself up to violent weeping in spite of the presence of other people. Meanwhile, several messengers came from Nishi Hachijo, and the Seisho decided that there was nothing to be done but to go, whatever might happen, and started forthwith, the Shosho taking his seat at the back of his car. Since the age of Hojin and Heiji the Hef-E-K family had nothing but prosperity, and no misfortune came their way, save only to this Seisho, who suffered through his unhappy son-in-law. When they came to the Nishi Hachijo mansion and inquired what they were to do, they were told that the Shosho must not enter within the gate, so leaving him in the care of some samurai, the Seisho entered by himself. Then Kiyomori men surrounded the Shosho on all sides and guarded him strictly, and being thus parted from the Seisho on whom he so much relied, his heart failed him and he felt very forlorn. The Seisho went into the middle gate, but the Nudo did not come out to meet him, so after a while he sent word by Gendyu, no, Hangwan Susada, saying, "I much regret that I am related to this troublesome fellow, but it cannot be helped. His wife is now ill, and this morning misfortune has fallen upon him so that she is now at the point of death. If he is in my hands, I will not permit him to do anything improper, so I pray you give him into my charge for the present." When Susada reported this to the Nudo, Kiyomori only answered, "This unfortunate Seisho has no discrimination," and gave no decision about the request. Some time afterward, however, he said to Susada, "The Shin Dainagon Narachika, no, Kaio and other imperial retainers intended to destroy our house and disturb the peace of the land, and this Shosho is the eldest son of this man. Whether he is deeply implicated in it or not, I cannot overlook it. If this rebellion had been carried out, would you have been likely to be unharmed?" When the Seisho heard this, he looked entirely crestfallen and replied, Since Hojin and Haiji, I have many times risked my life in battle on your behalf, and hereafter also I will ward off from your person the strong wind of adversity. Though I am an old man, I have many young children, and they too may become a strong protection. Yet when I ask you this one thing, namely to put the Shōsho in my charge, you do not willingly accede. That must be because you think that I too have some treasonable design. If I am thus doubted, it is of no use my living any longer in the world. So I will retire and become a monk, dwelling in seclusion in Koya or Kagawa, and praying earnestly for a rebirth in a better world. Verily, the relationships of this world are of no avail. When one is in the world, one has hope, but when the object of hope cannot be attained, spite arises. Ah, he exclaimed, it is not good to take the responsibility for the child of another. If he was not thus related to my daughter, I should not be so distressed. And he went out. Truly, answered the Seisho, I could only put in a word on your behalf. I could certainly go no further. Thereupon the Shōsho, bursting into tears, I fear for my own life. It is true, but how much do I wish to see my father again? This night, the Dainagon is to be put to be. 77 death, so what use for me to live longer? I wish to share my father lot, whatever it may be, so do you please inform the Nudo of my desire. The Seisho, much troubled at this prospect, replied, I spoke of your affair indeed, but farther than that I did not go. I have heard, however, that Shijimori the Nadejin advised his father this morning not to put him to death, so probably his circumstances will not be so unfavorable. Without waiting to hear any more, the Shōsho clasped his hands together and wept for joy. Who but a child would be able to forget all anxiety for himself, and thus rejoice at his father's safety? Indeed, the strongest bond of relationship is that of father and child. How necessary a thing it is to have children. Then the Seisho and the Shōsho returned to the mansion of the Seisho in the same carriage, just as they had gone forth. And the ladies in waiting and the retainers wept and rejoiced on their arrival, as over those who have come back from the dead. Chapter 6. The Admonition. The lay priest-chancellor, though he had had so many people arrested, still seemed unsatisfied. Coming forth to the middle gate of his mansion with a menacing aspect, he called in a loud voice for Sadyoshi. He was dressed in a red embroidered hidetere, worn over a black suit of armor with the breastplate ornamented with silver, and gripped under his arm the short halberd with silver-mounted handle that he had received many years before from the god of Itsukishima, when he was favored with a divine message in a dream, while he was yet only known as Aki no Kami, and which he always kept by his pillow. Chikugo, no, Kami straightway stood before his lord. He was attired in hidetere, of yellowish-red hue, and his armor was of scarlet. What do you think, Sadyoshi? In the period of Hojin, Taira Uma, no, Suk Tadamasa and more than half our family came to the help of the newly retired emperor, Sudoku Tenno, and Ikai no Miya Shichido Shino was the adopted son of the late Jayabu no Kaio Tadamori, my father, so that it was most difficult for me not to support him. In spite of these things, however, following the instructions of the late emperor Toba Tenno, I assisted the party of the emperor Go Shirakawa Ho-O's. This was one service that I did for the imperial house. Then at the time of the rebellion of Nabayori and Yashitomo in the 12th month of the first year of Heiji, when the palace was seized and the court entered, the country therefore falling into disorder, at the risk of my life I drove out the rebels and arrested Tsunemune and Korkata. Many times therefore have I put my life at the disposal of the imperial court, so that whatever people may say against us, the imperial house ought not to forsake our family, even to the 7th generation. Still the Ho-Oh has listened to such a pair of worthless rascals as Narachika and Seiko. This plan of destroying us, which the Ho-Oh seems inclined to, must by no means be carried out. I suppose that hereafter, if any accuse us falsely, the emperor is likely to issue a mandate for our destruction. And if we are once proclaimed enemies of the emperor, however much we regret it, we cannot redeem ourselves again. Formerly, for a time, until the country was quiet again, the Ho-Oh was removed to the North Palace of Toba. What then do you think about bringing higher here to Rokuhara now? If this be done, perhaps some of the Imperial Guard may make armed resistance. So order our retainers to make ready. I will serve the Ho-Oh no longer. Saddle my horse and bring out my general armor. Then Shium. No. Hangwin Morikuni rode hard to the mansion of Kiyomori and hurriedly told him what was happening. Without waiting to hear all, the Neidajin exclaimed, "Ali, now they have taken off the head of Narichika no Kaio." "That is not so," replied Morikuni. "But the Nudo has assumed his general armor and is going to lead his retainers to the Ho-Oh palace at Hajiji, declaring that until peace be restored, he will remove the Ho-Oh to the North Palace of Toba, or if not, will bring him to Rokuhara. But we think his real intention may be to banish him to the western confines of the country." Then the Neidajin, doubting if this was really so, but judging from his father demeanor of the morning that he was quite beside himself, hastily got into his car and proceeded to Nishi Hachijo. When he alighted at the gate and entered, he saw the Nudo in his body armor with scores of courtiers and nobles of his family, all in armor and hitotare, of various descriptions and colors, sitting in 2 rows along the veranda by the middle gate, besides a crowd of provincial lords and bodyguards and officials of all ranks overflowing into the courtyard beneath. Their standards were marshaled, and their horse, girths and helmet thongs tightened so that they looked as if immediately about to set forth. Kamatsu Dono, clad only in Neashi, with his hakama of large pattern girt up, and an eboshi on his head, entered with a peaceful rustle of his silk garments, making a striking contrast to them all. Still, even though it was his own son, in the presence of one who kept the 5 prohibitions and did not offend in the matter of the 5 virtues, who was charitable, courteous, and polite in all his dealings, he felt ashamed to be found in warlike attire. So, slightly closing the shoji, he drew on hastily over his armor a white priestly garment, the bosom of which he continually pulled together to conceal the shining metal of the breastplate. The Neidajin then took his seat one above that of his younger brother Monomori, neither he nor the Nudo saying anything. After some time, the silence was broken by his father. "A rebellion of Narichika is a thing of no account, but this affair has been planned by the Ho-Oh," said he. "So what do you think about bringing him to the North Palace of Toba, or if not, making him proceed hither until matters have quieted down?" P. 80, not waiting to hear any more, the Neidajin burst into tears. "What is the matter, then?" inquired the Nudo in surprise, whereupon Kiyomori, repressing his tears, replied, "If I am to judge by your words, I must suppose that the prosperity of our house is drawing to its close, for it is when people are on the downward path that they always commit some crime. Your appearance in this guise seems to me but as an illusion, for though this our land is a remote and narrow realm, yet since under the sovereignty of the descendants of Amma Terasu, Omi, Kami the stock of Amma no, Koin, no Mikoto have administered it, those who have held the office of Dajo, Daijin have never been accustomed thus to appear in warlike attire. Moreover you, a lay priest, putting off the garments sacred to the Buddhas of the 3 worlds that are the garb of those who are liberated from the passions, do suddenly assume armor and gird on bow and arrows, thus not only transgressing the 5 prohibitions and being guilty of shameless crime, but disregarding entirely the high virtues. It is not pleasant to speak thus, but I cannot hold back what is in my mind. In this world there are 4 obligations, that to heaven and earth, that to the emperor, that to father and mother, and that to one fellow men, and of these the most important is that to the emperor. All the land is the emperor dominion. We know the example of those 2 sages in China, he who washed his ears in the waters of Aizen, and he who ate the bracken on the mountains of Shuyo, how they teach the difficulty of opposing the emperor. How much more must it be so with one who has advanced to the high office of Dajo Daijin, from a family in which such an office is without precedent. I too, an ignorant and stupid person, have become minister, and more than half the country is subject to our ordinances. Is not all this the reason for a rare obligation to the emperor? But you, unmindful of all this great obligation, are about to treat the Ho, O person, in a violent manner, a thing quite contrary to the will of Hachiman and Amma Terasu. Nippon is the land of the gods, and the gods will not permit discourtesy. Thus the emperor plans cannot be without reason. That our house has for several generations subdued the foes of the emperor and pacified the angry waves of the four seas may be indeed great patriotism, but to boast of it is only inconsiderate to others. In the 17 Articles of the Constitution of Shotoku Teishi it is written, "Every man has a mind, and every mind has self-will. Some say one thing is good and some another, so who can decide which is right? There is wisdom and folly in both. It is like a circle having no end. This being so, when one is angry, he must first condemn himself. But as the fall of our house is not yet destined, this plot has already been revealed. Moreover, we have already taken Narachika into custody, so there is no need for anxiety about anything the emperor may do. After suitably punishing these people, you must explain the matter to the Ho. Thus, serving the emperor and cherishing the people with sympathy, you will receive the protection of the gods and not disobey the will of Buddha. If you are favored by the gods and Buddha, the emperor will change his opinion of us. If I compare the emperor and yourself, there is no distinction between the affection I have for both. But when comparing what is right and what is wrong, one must of necessity prefer the right. Since then right is on the side of the emperor, I will protect the Ho, O palace to the best of my ability, seeing that my having risen to my present high position of Daijin, no, Teisho from a low rank is entirely due to the imperial favor. When I consider the greatness of this favor, it is more than 10,000 times 10,000 clusters of jewels, yea, deeper than the double-dyed purple. Therefore I must go to the Ho, O palace, and my samurai who have vowed to lay down their lives for me at any time will doubtless go with me. And if I gather them together and go to protect the Hajuji Den, a great crisis will come about. How unhappy M114 if I remain loyal to the emperor. I must forget the gratitude I owe to my father, which is higher than the peaks of I-8MT. Marrow. Verily, my pith is a hard one, for if I avoid unfilial conduct, then I shall be a rebellious subject and undutiful to the emperor. I know not which way to take, for it is difficult to decide on one or the other. I beseech you then, order me to be beheaded, for then I can neither go with you against the Ho, O, nor can I be on his side to protect him. In China, Shoka attained merit beyond ordinary men and became prime minister, being permitted to attend at the court wearing shoes and with his sword girt on. But on one occasion he was disobedient, and the Emperor Koso punished him severely. Considering this precedent, even if a man attained to great wealth, rank and prosperity, imperial favor and the highest office, it is not so difficult to fall. If a wealthy and noble house like ours accumulates stipend, and rank too easily, it is like a tree that bears too much fruit and is injured in its roots. Alas, I care to live no longer to see my country in such disorder. Born in a degenerate age to encounter such misfortunes, what an evil destiny indeed. How easy it would be to order one of your samurai to take me out into the courtyard there and strike off my head. Consider these things, all of you. And wiping his tears with the sleeve of his nyashi, he wept bitterly, and all the hef, E.K., as they sat row upon row, lifted up their voices and wept also. The Nudo, hearing Shijimori, in whom he put all his trust, speak thus, felt his heart fail him, as he answered, "Indeed, I have never even contemplated such a thing, but I only fear as to what may happen if the Ho-O adopt the plans of these rascals." "Whatever mistake may be perpetrated," replied the Neidejin, "how can we lift a hand against the Ho-O?" Then, suddenly standing up in the middle gate, he addressed the samurai. "I think B-83, you have heard everything that I have said. I was present from this morning and tried to calm this disturbance, but it is beyond my power, so I must return home. Do not march against the Ho-O while my head is on my shoulders." Then calling his retainers, he returned to the Komatsu Den. On arriving there, he summoned Hangwin Morakuni and instructed him thus. I have this morning learned that the country is in a critical condition, so let those who consider themselves dutiful retainers arm themselves and follow. At this all thought that such a summons from one usually so little moved by rumor must be of great import and hasted to obey. The retainers came pouring out from the villages of Yodo, Hatsukashi, Uji, Akanoya, Hino, Kwanjuji, Dago, Agurusu, Mamezu, Katsura, Ohara, Shizuhara, and Serafu, some in armor but without helmets, some with arrows and no bow, some with 1 foot only in the stirrup and some with neither, so great was their haste and disorder. Sadyoshi weeping replied, Such things depend on a man character. He is not likely to do it, for he will already regret what he has said here this morning. Kiyomori, however, thought that it was not advisable to fall out with his son, the Neidejin, so he modified his violent intentions towards the retired emperor. Hurriedly stripping off his armor, he donned the robe and scarf of a priest and betook himself to his prayers, which, however, by no means arose from his heart. Meanwhile, at the Komatsu Den, Morakuni was ordered to make a roll of the retainers who had mustered, and it was found that their number was more than 10,000 horsemen. After inspecting this muster roll, Shijimori came forth to the middle gate and thus, p. 84, addressed the assembled samurai. I am greatly moved at your rallying here so quickly without regard for your own affairs. In China, there is an example of this kind. You, O of the Shu dynasty, had a favorite consort named Ho, Jai, and she was the greatest beauty in the kingdom. But in one thing she did not please you, O, she never laughed, never at all did she even smile. Now it is the custom in China that when a rebellion breaks out in the army, they light beacon fires and beat drums to assemble the soldiers. And it happened that a revolt took place at this time so that the beacons were lighted. And when this consort saw them, she exclaimed, "Oh, what a lot of them there are," and smiled for the first time. And when she smiled, her expression was very winsome, and you, O, was highly delighted, so that many times after he had beacons lighted without any special reason. And when the generals came and found there was no revolt, they had nothing to do but to go away again. This happening many times, at last they did not even come, and then it chanced that an enemy from a neighboring country made a raid and attacked the capital of Yu. Oh, but though he had beacons lighted, thinking it was only for the consort amusement, no soldiers responded, so that the capital fell and Yu, O himself, was killed. Whereupon the consort changed herself into a fox and ran away. This being so, whenever I summon you, come hither quickly as you have done today. For I called you together because this morning I heard that there was a great crisis. But afterwards, when I investigated more fully, I was convinced that the report was mistaken. So you may return again to your quarters. On this, the retainers retired. Now it seems that Shijimori had not really believed that there was any crisis. But after rebuking his father that morning, he wished to find out whether the soldiers would be on his side or not, and that he did not intend to attack Kiyomori, but only used this device to prevent any inclination on his part of interfering with the emperor. His contemporaries also praised him, declaring that it was a most fortunate thing that such a man had become Daijin, Taisho, who was superior to all in courtesy and etiquette, beside being supreme in intellect and ability. If there is a minister who dares to advise the emperor, then the country will be at peace. And in the family, if there is a son who advises his father, that house will stand firm. Happy is the country that has such a minister, both in ancient and modern times. Chapter 7. The Exile of the Shin Dainijoen. On the 2nd day of the 6th month, they brought forth the Shin Dainagen Narichika, Kaio, into the reception chamber of the mansion and entertained him with a repast. But his heart was too full even for him to touch a morsel. Then his guard Namba no Jiro Tsunito ordered his car and bade him enter it, whereupon the Dainagen reluctantly did so. He expressed a wish to see Shijimori once more, but unhappily was not permitted to do so. Looking round on the escort that surrounded him, he could not see one of his own men. Ah, he exclaimed. "Even one exiled for a great crime ought to be allowed at least one of his own retainers." When the guards heard this, their tears flowed even on to their sleeves of mail. Thus, going along the west side of the Shujaku to the southward, he only saw the buildings of the court from a distance, who had so long been in attendance there, whereat everyone, even to the servants and ox drivers, he knew so well, buried their faces in their sleeves and wept. How much more sad must be the state of his wife and children left behind in the sight. On passing by the Toba Palace, he called to mind how he always accompanied the Ho-Oh when he visited there. Farther on, he saw his own country seat, Suhama, in the distance. Passing out through the south gate of Toba-den, they hurried to take the ship. He then expressed the wish that he might at least be executed at a place like this that was near the capital. On inquiring the name of the retainer who was to accompany him, the samurai told him it was Namba no Jiro Kenyasu. Then the Dainagon asked if any of his own retainers were present, as he had something to say before. He embarked, but when Sunito went round and searched, there was not one to be found. Then the Dainagon, weeping, exclaimed, "Ah, in the time of my prosperity I had 2,000 or 3,000 retainers, but now there is not one who comes to see the last of me even from afar off." Whereat the rough soldiers were again moved to moisten the sleeves of their armor. A copious flood of tears, indeed, was all that followed him. Formerly, when he went to visit the shrines of Kumano or Tennoji, he used to go in a state barge of great magnificence accompanied by 20 or 30 other ships. But now, he had to embark on a rough vessel with nothing but a large tent on it, escorted by strange soldiers. And today, as he leaves the capital for the last time, to sail far off across the sea, his wretched feelings can only be imagined. It was only owing to the urgent pleadings of Komatsu Dono that his death sentence was lightened to one of exile. That day they reached the coast of Damo, Su in the province of Setsu. The next day, that is the 3rd, a messenger from Kyoto came hurrying to this place, whereupon the Dainagon thought he was to be executed there, but the messenger had only brought news that he was to be exiled to Kojima in Bizen. There was also a letter from Shijimori in which was written, "I bad thought to get you sent to some country place near the capital, but alas, it cannot be, so I have no further use for this world. However, I have at least managed to save your life, therefore set your mind at ease." To Namba no Jiro he also sent a message, adjuring him to pay great respect to his charge and to take care not to oppose his wishes, adding also directions in detail about preparations for the journey. One, whither does he go, leaving the Ho-Oh to whom he owes so much, and parting from his wife and children who have never left his side before even for a moment? Never again will he return and see his family. Once before at the appeal of Heian he had been exiled, but the Ho-Oh, taking compassion on him, recalled him again from Nishi Shichijo, so his present punishment was not by the imperial will. "Why has this happened?" he gasped, looking up to heaven and down again to earth. However much he wept, it was in vain. As soon as the dawn came, the ship put out, and as they journeyed, he did not but weep and seemed not to wish to survive any longer. Still his fleeting life did not come to an end. As the white waves dropped away in their wake, the capital receded farther and farther. As the days went by one after another, the distant goal came nearer and nearer. When they arrived at Kojima in Bizen, they brought him to a rude farmer house roofed with brushwood. The mountains were behind him and the sea before, for it was an eland. The sounding waves and pine breeze on the shore, everything gave him a sad and lonely feeling. Chapter 8. The Pine of Ikiowae. The Shin Dainagon was not the only person who was thus punished, for many of his companions suffered likewise. It was decided that Omi no Chujo Nudo Renjo should be banished to Sado, Yamashiro, no Kami Modakane to Hoki, Shikibuno Teiho Masatsuna to Harima, so Hangwan Nabufusa to Owa, and Shinkei no Hangwan Sukyuki to Mimasaka. At this time, the Nudo was staying at his villa at Fukuhara. On the 20th day, his messenger Setsu no Kami Morizumi reached the Kadoaki mansion, the residence of the seisho Taira Norimori, and ordered him to bring quickly Tamba, no, Shosho, whom he had in charge, as he intended to do something in regard to him. To this the seisho replied, "It is very sad that I should again be grieved about this. It had been better that something had been done before." But he bade the Shosho hasten to Fukuhara. The Shosho started on his way weeping, and his wife and ladies, in waiting, begged him to ask for the seisho good offices once more, since all else was unavailing. "As for me, I have said all I can," replied the seisho. "There is nothing else left for me but to forsake the world. What can I say more? Anyhow, to whatever place you may be sent, I will come and see you as long as I live." Now the Shosho had a child of 3 years old, but as he was himself young, he had not paid any special regard to his children. Now, however, when he found himself in this situation, they became somewhat dear to him, and he thought that he would like to see him once more. The milk nurse therefore brought him, and the Shosho, taking him on his knee, stroked his hair and wept. "Alas, when you were 7 years old, I wished to bring you into the imperial household, but now that is all in vain. If by chance you should live to grow up, you must become a priest and pray for my happiness in a future life." The child naturally could not comprehend these words, but when his father finished speaking, he nodded his head, so that the Shosho and the child mother, beside the milk nurse and others who were in attendance, even the most unfeeling, were fain to burst into tears. The messenger from Fukuhara bade him start for Toba that evening, but the Shosho asked that, as he had not long to stay, at least he might stop that night in the capital. This was not, however, permitted, and so, abandoning hope, he went to Toba that night. The seisho was so grieved that he did not accompany him, and on the 22nd of the same month he arrived at Fukuhara, whereupon the Nudo gave orders to Sino Tero Kanyasu, who dwelt in Bichu, to take him to that province. Kanyasu, fearing that the seisho would hear of it, did not treat him at all harshly, but was very kind to him on the way. The Shosho, in spite of this, refused to be comforted, but night and day called on the name of Buddha, praying and interceding for his father. Now the Shin Dainagan Narichika, no, Kaiho was yet in Kajima of Bizen, but as this was considered to be an unsuitable place, being near to port, he was removed to the village of Niwase on the confines of Bizen and Bichu, and lodged in a mountain temple named Araki, no, Besho in Kibai, no, Nakayama, so that he was not more than 50 cho distant from Sino in Bichu, where the Shosho was, and the Shosho yearned toward that quarter for tidings of his father. Calling Kanyasu, therefore, he inquired of him how far it was to Araki, no, Besho, but Kanyasu, thinking it was not wise to inform him, told him that it was 12 or 13 days' journey. The Shosho, weeping, replied, "Of old, Nippon had 33 provinces, and now it is divided into 66, so that what is now called Bizen, Bingo, and Bichu were formerly all one country. Dua and Mutsu in the eastern quarter also formed one province consisting of 66 districts, but now 12 districts of it have been separated and called Dua. But those lines were written when the two provinces together were known by the one name. When the 12 districts were divided from it, they were given the name of Dua. So Senkata Chujo went to the province of Dua and saw the pine of Akoya. From Dazefu to Tsukushi," continued the Shosho, "is only a 15 days' journey for the courier who carries fish to the emperor, so that 15 days' journey from here will take one as far as Kyushu, will it not? Even at the farthest, the distance between two places in Bizen, Bichu, and Bingo cannot be more than a 3 days' journey, and that you thus call near far is only because you will not tell me where my father the Dainagan is lodged." After this, though still longing to see him, he asked about him no more. Chapter 11. The Death of the Shin Dieani Joen. Meanwhile Hishoji, no, Shujio Shunkwan Sazu, Tamba no Shosho Naritsyun, and Haihangwin Yasyori were all exiled to the island of Kikai, Ga Shima in the Bay of Satsuma. This is a place that can only be reached from the capital after many hardships and the crossing of stormy seas. It is a place that even sailors cannot find unless quite certain of the way, and it is an island in which few men live. There are some people there, it is true, But as they wear no clothing, they are not like ordinary folk of the mainland, neither can they understand our language. Their bodies are covered with hair and black like oxen, and the men do not wear eboshi, neither do the women have long hair. As they have nothing else to eat, they must kill animals for food. They do not cultivate the fields, and so have neither rice nor corn, nor do they grow mulberry trees, and so are lacking in silk. In this island there is a high mountain that burns with eternal fire, and the land is full of sulfur, so that the island is also called Shima, Sulfur Island. Thunder rolls continuously up and down the mountain, and at its foot rain falls in abundance. It is not possible for anyone to live there for a moment. The Shin Dainagon was feeling more calm in his mind now, but hearing that his son Shosho Naritsune was exiled to Kikai, Shima in Satsuma Bay with 2 others, thinking that there was now nothing more to wait for, he informed Shijimori by messenger of his desire to shave his head and become a priest. And this being reported to the he also gave his assent. Thus putting off the bright-sleeved dress of prosperity, he forsook this fleeting world and came down to wear the black costume of a recluse. Now the Dainagon wife, having retired to the vicinity of Unrinji in the northern hills, not only found such an unaccustomed life grievous to her, but had nothing to occupy her days, and so felt extremely miserable. In her former residence she had had many ladies, in waiting and retainers, but now they were either afraid or ashamed to visit her, all except one retainer named Gensiman, Jo Nabutoshi, who took pity on her and came to see her continually. One day she called this Nabutoshi and addressed him thus: "My lord has been so far staying at Kajima in Bizen, but lately I have heard that he has been removed to Araki no Besho. One, how much I should like to send a letter to him and to receive an answer in return." "Since I was a child," replied Nabutoshi, bursting into tears, "how many are the benefits I have received from you, and never yet have I been parted from you. Your commands I have always obeyed, and I have always heeded your advice. When my lord went down to the western province, I would have accompanied him, but Rokuhara would not allow it, and so I could not. But now whatever hardships I may encounter, I will surely bear your august message to him." His mistress was overjoyed at these words, and forthwith wrote the letter. Her little son and daughter also wrote a message, and Nabutoshi, taking them, proceeded to go down to Araki no Besho in the far-off province of Bizen. Making inquiries of the guard Namba no Jirotsunido, that warrior, respecting his dutiful conduct, soon brought him to where his lord was. His master, the Dainagon Nudo, now, as always, occupying himself with sadly musing about his home in the capital, on seeing Nabutoshi arrive from Kyoto, hardly understanding whether it was dream or reality, sprang up and bade him enter immediately. Nabutoshi advanced, but on seeing the condition of his lord, his lowly dwelling and his black priestly garments, his heart sank within him and he could not restrain his tears. Then, controlling himself somewhat, he related all that his lady had said to him and presented the letter. The Dainagon, on opening it and seeing the writing all blurred with tears, and reading how much his children sorrowed for him, not to speak of his wife unbearable grief and anxiety, felt that his former longing was as nothing to his present anguish. "Ah," replied the Dainagon, "I think there will be no need for that. You will never see me again." And in his grief and regret at parting, he called Nabutoshi back again and again. But as there was nothing else to be done, the retainer, restraining his grief, returned again to the capital and delivered the letter to his lady. When she opened it, she immediately perceived his change of state, for inside the packet there was a lock of his hair that he had shaved off. She could read no farther but exclaiming, "All, how grievous is such a memento one," covered her head and threw herself to the ground. Her children also lifted up their voices and wept aloud. Now on the 19th day of the 8th month of the same year, the Dainagon was at last put to death at Araki no Besho in Kibai no Nakayama in the village of Nuase in the province of Bizen. And of the manner of it, it is said that first, they put poison in his wine. But as this had no effect, planting tridents in the ground under a cliff about 20 feet high, they pushed him over it and he was pierced through by them so that he died. What a pitiful death it was. When his wife heard of his death, she exclaimed, "Until now I have not changed my condition and become a nun because I thought I might see him again. But now it is of no avail." And retiring to a temple called Badayin, she became a nun and devoted herself to a religious life. Now this lady was the daughter of Yamashiro, no Kami Atsukata, and she had been loved by the Go Shirakawa, being of exceeding great beauty. And as this Dainagon was beloved by the she had been given to him afterwards. So his young sons and daughters passed their days, bringing flowers and drawing water for the offerings to Buddha, and praying for the welfare of their father in the world to come. And thus the events of the time went on changing, just like the 5 changes of the angelic beings. Chapter 11. The Tokyu Diane Joan goes to Itsuke. Now as the Tokyu Deiji Dainagon Sain Sada, no Kaya was passed over by Taira Monomori, the second son of the Nudo, in the matter of the office of Teisho. He retired from his office of Dainagon and lived in seclusion, watching to see what turn things might take. But when he was inclined to become a priest, all his house grieved and lamented greatly. Among them was one who had the title of Shadebu to Kurando, no, Teiyu Shijkin by name, a man capable in all matters. After a while, when they had spoken of various things both present and past, the Dainagon said, "Consider the prosperity of the Ek. The eldest son Shijimori and the second son Monomori have become generals, if the right and left. And still there is the third son Tamamori and the grandson Kormori. If both of these take their turn, it does not seem as if any one of another family will ever become Teisho at all. That is the end of things for me. I will become a recluse." "No," Kurando weeping replied. "If you become a monk, all of your family will be without anyone to guide them. I have lately thought of a novel plan. You know that at Tsukushima, Inaki is exceedingly revered by the Ek family. Do you go and visit it?" "I had not thought of such a thing," replied the Dainagon, "but I will certainly act on your advice immediately." And straightway he purified himself and set out for Itsukushima. On his arrival there, he found that there were indeed many beautiful dancing girls there, and they declared that though the Ek lords were accustomed to visit the shrine, other courtiers seldom came, and so his pilgrimage was very interesting to them. So 10 of the principal Naishi kept him company continually day and night, and entertained him very agreeably. When these Naishi inquired the reason of his coming, he replied that it was because he had been passed over in the appointment to the office of Teisho in favor of another person, and had come to pray about it. So he tarried there 7 days, and they performed the sacred music and dance called Kagura, as well as many local sacred songs and dances, while the entertainment called Bugaku was given 3 times. Then, when he started on his return journey, the 10 chief Naishi prepared boats and went with him a day journey to see him off, and Tokudeji, regretting to part with them, first persuading them to come another day, and then at last brought them right to Kyoto, and taking them to his mansion, entertained them splendidly and made them many presents. The Naishi, declaring that as they had come from such a distant place to the capital, they must certainly visit their patrons the Ek lords, proceeded to Nishi Hachijo with that purpose. The Nudo, who came forth and received them, inquired for what reason they had journeyed all the way to Kyoto, whereupon they explained that Tokudeji Dono had visited their shrine, and that having prepared ships and decided to come with Min 1-day journey, to see him off and then to return, he had persuaded them to come farther and farther until at last they had come to the capital with him. Then the Nudo asked why Tokudeji had gone to Itsukushima, and they told him that it was to pray about being passed over in the election to Teisho. Hearing this, the Nudo nodded his head and said to himself, How admirable a thing it is that he has made a pilgrimage to the distant shrine of Itsukashima that I revere above all others, instead of going to the many influential and potent shrines and temples in the capital. If his desire is so earnest, then I will see. So he made Shijimori the Neidejin retire from the office of Sadaisho and elevated Tokudeji Dono to it in his place over the head of his second son, Munamori the Yudaisho. What a clever device this was indeed. How sad that the Shin Dainagon did not adopt such a plan, as this instead of making a useless rebellion, which led to the destruction of himself and his descendants. Chapter 12. The Destruction of Heian. Now the Ho-Oh, having become the disciple of Kojin Sojo of Midara, was studying the esoteric doctrines of Shingon, and having read the 3 secret sutras called Dai, Nishai Kaio, 2-I Kongo, Cho Kaio, and So Shitsuji Kaio, on the 4th day of the 9th month was to undergo the ceremony of Kwancho, or baptism. When they heard this, the priests of Heian were wrath and said, "From ancient days, it has been the custom that the ceremony of Kwancho should be performed by our temple, and it is for the especial purpose of admonishing and baptizing the emperor that our God manifests himself in this mountain. If therefore the ceremony is to be performed at Midara, there is nothing for it but to burn our useless temple." Therefore the Ho-Oh, considering his idea unprofitable, gave up his intention of receiving Kwancho, and only requested that the purification ceremony be carried out. But in order to carry out his original intention, he summoned Koken Sojo and went to Tennoji, where he built a temple called Gachiko Inn, and decided on the Well of Kame, as his sacred water of baptism. Then, finishing his study of the sutras, he received baptism at the original sacred spot of Buddhism in Japan. But though the Kwancho was not performed at Midara in order to pacify the wrath of the monks of Heian, yet at that temple differences of opinion between the Doshu, lay brothers, and the Gakusho, student priests, led to pitched battles between them in which the Gakusho were defeated, so that the destruction of Heian and a great disaster to the imperial family seemed likely. These Doshu were either youthful attendants on the Gakusho who had become priests, or else priests who did menial work in the temples, and at the time when Kakujin Gon, Sojo, the Zashu of Kongo, Ju-in was the head of Heian, they were called Jeshu and lodged in the 3 pagodas, being employed in offering the flowers before the Buddhas. Of late years, however, they were called Gianin, and, setting at naught the higher priests, they got the upper hand by force. So when these Doshu, disobeying the orders of the higher priests, planned a revolt, their superiors appealed to the court nobles for an order to punish them, and asked the samurai to carry the order into execution. Then the Nudo, at the order of the Ho-Oh, sent Yuasa Gon, no, Kami Munishige of the province of Kei, with about 2,000 men of the Kinai district, to attack the Doshu, in cooperation with the Teishu, or upper priests. Now the Doshu were at this time lodging in the building called Tuyobo. But when they heard of this, they came down to Sanga no Shorin Omi and gathered a large force with which they returned to Heian, where they built a fortification at Sabasaka and took up their position in it. On the 20th day of the 9th month, and the first part of the hour of the dragon, 8 a.m., 3,000 of the Teishu, or upper priests, with 2,000 men of the imperial army, 5,000 in all, made an attack on Sabasaka, shouting their war cry vigorously. Those in the fort, however, shot arrows and cast stones upon them, so that their united forces were shot down to a man. As the Teishu tried to get before the imperial forces, while the imperial army strove to outstrip the Teishu, this vying with each other divided their counsels, and they were not able to fight effectively. Moreover, the band of ruffians who composed the Doshu were made up of thieves, brigands, mountain robbers, and pirates, all consumed with a lust for booty and fighting each for himself, reckless whether they lived or died. So that on this occasion, also the Gakusho had the worst of the battle. After this, Heian gradually fell into dilapidation. Except the 12 branches of the Zen sect, few priests were left to live there, The lectures in the valley were gradually abolished. The religious ceremonies were performed no more. The academies of learning were closed, and the floor for Zen meditation became deserted. No longer was the flower of the Tendai fragrant, and the moon of its clear doctrines was clouded. There was none of light, the sacred lamps that had never gone out for 300 years. The smoke of the perpetual incense ceased. No longer do the vast buildings tower aloft, cleaving the blue heavens with their 3-storied bulk, with their crossbeams of immeasurable height and their rafters that are scarcely discerned amid the white mists. The Buddhas are adored but by the mountain blasts. Their golden statues are wetted by the muddy raindrops. The moonbeams streaming through the chinks of the roof are their sacred lamps, and their lotos seats are encrusted with the diamond dew of dawn. In this unhallowed and degenerate age, the Buddhist law that was supreme in the 3 countries declined. Consider the remains of Buddhism in far-off India. The Chiku, Rin Shōja, and the Gitsu, Kodoku, on, where of old the lax was preached, are they not the haunt of wolves and foxes, their foundations alone remaining? The waters of the lake of Hakuro have dried up, and the tall grasses have grown up within it. The Taben and Jijo pillars are moss, covered and leaning to their fall. In China, also Tendaisen, Gadeisen, Hakubaji, and Jyokusenji are now dilapidated and forsaken, and the sacred volumes of the Mahayana and Hinayana are rotting at the bottom of their boxes. In our country, too, the 7 great temples of Nara are laid waste. The 8 sects, yea, the 9 have left no race. Of old at Atego and Takao the sacred halls and pagodas raised on high their ranging roofs, but in one night they utterly ruined and became a place for Tengu to dwell in. So also may it not be that the noble law of Tendai has been abolished in this era of Jisho. There were none among the men of understanding who did not fail to lament it. Who wrote it now not, but upon a pillar of one of the monasteries this verse found. See, this mount of prayer returns to its former condition, now becomes once more a lonely and desolate peak. Was he not thinking of the prayer of Dengyo Daishi when first he established these temples? O unexcelled perfect intelligence of Buddha, show forth thy divine help on this mount whereon I build. It was indeed most touching. How admirable was the writer of it. The 8th day is the feast of Yakashi, but there was no sound of the invocation to be heard. The 4th month is the month of the incarnation of Sakya Muni, but there was none to make the offerings of silk and money. The red fence of the brine is hoary with age. Nothing is left but the straw rope of the gods. Chapter XII. The burning of Zenkoji. At this time, the temple of Zenkoji in Shinano was burned down. Now the Tathagata of this temple are a set of 3 meter half an arm long, unequaled in the 3 countries, cast after profound concentration by Mokurin Choja 3-0 from the gold of Enbuden 3-I, which the wisdom of Gekwai Choja procured from the palace of the Dragon King, when of old in Shi and Mid India 5 kinds of disease broke out, and priests and people died in great multitudes. After Buddhism was destroyed, they stayed in India more than 500 years. Since Buddhism moved to the eastward, they were brought to Kudara, and after 1,000 years, Seimei being emperor of Kudara and Kemei Tenno of this land, they were brought thence to Japan and lodged at Naniwa no Yura in the province of Setsu. Since golden rays always shone from them, the name of the era was called Konko, golden rays. In the 3rd month of the 3rd year, and during the first 10 days, Honda Yoshimitsu of Omi in Shinano came up to the capital to meet the statues and took them back with him to his own place. By day Yoshimitsu carried the statues, but by night they carried him. Arriving at Shinano, he lodged them in the district of Mizunouchi. Since then 500 years have gone by, but this was the first time a fire broke out. It is said that if the monarchical principle is destroyed, Buddhism will first be abolished, so that people said that the destruction of this holy mountain and its many temples was a portent of the coming overthrow of the monarchy. Chapter XIV. The petition of Yasuori. Now the three who were exiled to Kikegashima did not particularly value their lives, which trembled in the balance like dew on the tip of a leaf. But food and clothing were provided for Tamba, no Shosho from the domain of his father, in La Terra, no Seisho Norimori at Case in Heizen, so that Shunquin and Yasuyori also managed to support themselves from it. Moreover, Yasuyori, on being exiled on his way, had become a priest at Murazumi in Suwo, and was henceforth known by the religious name of Shosho. He had originally intended to do this before, so he made this couplet. Now that the way of the world has gone so entirely against me, how very foolish I was not to have left it before. As Tamba, no Shosho and Yasuyori had always been believers in the god of Kumano. They wished to build a temple to supplicate the three Ganjin in this island that they might be delivered and returned to the Epital. Shunquin, however, being by nature a skeptic, took no part in it at all. So the two, being agreed, went round the island searching for a place like to Kumano. One spot they found with a wooded bank, its cliff covered with creepers like red embroidery. Another a wondrous peak hidden in the clouds with variegated scenery below it like green damask outspread. The mountain landscape and splendid groves surpassing all they had so far seen. Looking to the southward, the sea spread out far as the eye could reach, its distant waves dissolving into clouds and mist. Northward from the lofty precipice, a waterfall leaped out 100 feet down with an eternal roar of sound. Since the age of the gods, the wind had sounded in the pines. It was a spot that greatly resembled Natch, with its waterfalls sacred to the Ganjin. So they gave it the name of the Mountain of Natchi, and the peaks they also named Hongu and Shingu, giving the names of the different gods to various places. As the days went on, having no change of clothes, they put on hempen ones, and purifying themselves in the water of the marsh, they feigned it to be the pure streams of Iwata in Kumano, climbing up a hill there as though it were the Hoshin Mons. On this, the first year of Jisho, the year of the cock, and the second day of the 10th month thereof, being the 350th day of our sojourn, choosing a favorable day and a propitious hour, we Yurin Fujiwara Naritsune and the priest Shosho, faithful worshippers of the Sancho Ganjin of Kumano, roost efficacious in all Nippon, and the holy law of the great Basatsu of the waterfall, fervently and truly with whole heart, with body, mind, and speech in full accord, humbly make petition. Thou who grantest the petitions of all creatures, thou to whom the emperor and all his subjects pour out evening and morning the pure holy water, washing away the filth of this world, that they may have peace in this world and happiness in the world to come, turning every evening toward thy mountain and calling on thy jewel name, for thy mercy never faileth. Thy goodness is boundless as the lofty mountains, and thy pity deep as the valleys. So will we climb to the mists above and stiffer the dews beneath. How should we tread these rough paths, unless we relied on them as a place in which is thy spirit? And unless we could look on the goodness of the Ganjin, how could we go to this remote mountain? Therefore, O Shoujo Ganjin and Huryu Daisataji, turn toward us thy lotus eyes of grace and incline then all, hearing ears to listen. Behold our burning zeal and grant all our petitions. Guide when in need those who are enlightened in the law, and save those who are yet in ignorance. Leaving thy jewel abode and hiding thy 84,000 beams of light, show thyself in the dust of the 6 ways 4-0 and the 3 regions. Earnestly we lift up our hands together in prayer for the removal of retribution of our sins in a former existence, and for the required blessing of long life, waving the gohei without intermission, clad in the garments of purification, and offering the flowers that symbolize knowledge of the way, making the sacred floor to vibrate with our zeal, and offering pure water with earnest mind that it may fill the lake from which flow thy benefits. Thus mayest thou receive our petition and fulfill all our desires. Thus looking upward we petition the 12 Ganjin, that with salvation in their wings, oaring over the sky of this sea of pain, they may restore us to our former rank, and speedily and at a near time grant our petition to return to our homes. Chapter XV. The Floating SOTOBA. Straightway the withered herbage will put forth flowers and fruit. Repeating this chant 3 times, they vanished. Then Yasuyori Nudo, awaking from his dream, thought it a wondrous sign. Indeed, it must have been sent by the dragon god. For seeing that one of the 3 Gonjin of Kumano called Nishi, no, Gozen was the Kwanin of the 1,000 hands in India, and the dragon god of the sea is one of the 28 servants of this Kwanin. No doubt they would obtain their desire. Another night the 2 spent there also, and in a dream they saw 2 leaves blown in by a breeze from the offing and wafted into their sleeves. And when they looked at them, lol, they were leaves of the Nagi, 41i tree at Kumano. Then taking them down to the shore, he cast them into the white sea waves one by one with this invocation. Namu Kimio Kore, O Shaka Nyorai and 4 great heavenly kings, and ye God of heaven and earth, and all the deities who protect this imperial land, especially the Gonjin of Kumano and the deity of Itsukashima Inaki. May it please you to grant that one of these may reach the capital. As he went on making them and casting them into the sea thus, as the days passed the number of the Sotoba increased with them, and whether the winds assisted him or the gods and Buddhas sent it, one of the 1,000 Sotoba was cast up on the shore before the shrine of Itsukashima Daimyojin. It chanced moreover that a priest who had some connection with Yasuyori Nudo had just come to Itsukashima in the course of a pilgrimage to the western part of the country, and this priest had the intention of going to the island if he could find occasion, to inquire the whereabouts of the Nudo. There a servant came out from the shrine dressed in a karajinu and looking like an ordinary person, and in the course of their talk the priest said, "It is true that the gods appear in the world in divers guises to save mortals, but in what connection does the god of this place appear as a sea dragon?" 4. Then the priest, wondering at these marvels, offered gifts to the shrine with peace of mind. And as the moon rose and the tide came in at dusk, he saw the Sotoba come floating among the seaweed that drifted in from the offing, and idly picking it up, he saw the verse upon it. And as the characters were cut in the wood, they were not washed off by the waves but stood out clearly. Thinking this very strange, he stuck it on the side of his pilgrim box and went back to Kyoto. It was sent on by him to Komatsu Dono, and he in turn sent it to his father. Of famous verses, there is the stanza that Kaki no Moto Hidamaro made about the ship disappearing among the islands, thinking fondly of his native laud, and that of Yamabe no Akihito in like case celebrating the storks among the reeds. So the god of Sumiyoshi also spoke of the shingled roof of his shrine, and the Miyajin of Miwa of the cedar trees of his shrine gate, when afar from his home. Since Suza no, oh no, Mikoto first made the verse of 31 syllables. Even the gods and Buddhas have thus expressed their feelings in it. Chapter XVI. SOBU. Now the Nudo, being neither wood nor flint, was touched and felt pity, and there was none in Kyoto among high or low, old or young, who did not murmur the stanzas of the exiles of Kikegashima, and even though they had made 1,000 Sotoba, they were very small things, so that it was very wonderful that the verses should be carried all the way to Kyoto from the far distant shore of the Bay of Satsuma. When one comes to consider the matter, there was also an example of this kind in old time in China. When formerly the king of Han made war on the barbarians, Rai Shou Kei was first made general and led an army of 300,000 horsemen. But his forces being the weaker, the barbarian army conquered, and Rai Shou Kei was taken alive by the barbarian king. Then Sabu set out against them with 500,000 horsemen, but again his army proved the weaker, and the barbarians were victorious, capturing 6,000 prisoners, and amongst them Sabu himself. Selecting 630 of the most important of these, they cut off one of the legs of each and let them go. Of these some died immediately, and others some time afterward, and Sabu was the only one who survived. Having only one leg, he managed to keep himself alive by eating the fruit of the trees on the mountains, and by plucking the nezari berries in the fields, or by picking up the gleanings of the rice fields in autumn. So long did he do this, that the wild geese that abounded in the rice fields ceased have any fear of him, and looking on them and meditating sadly that they would fly over his beloved native land, at last wrote his thoughts on paper, and having caught one of them, he tied the massage to its wing, and earnestly praying it to be the document to the king, let it go. Faithfully enough, as was its wont, the wild goose flew over from the south to the capital, and as Shō, king of Han, chanced to be walking in the imperial garden and feeling somehow rather sad, was gazing at the dusky twilight sky. A line of wild geese came soaring overhead, and one of them, flying low, bit off a letter from one of its wings and let it fall. An official immediately picked it up and brought p. 108 it to the king, who opened it and read as follows. Having spent the first 3 months of the year in a cave in the rocks, now I am cast forth wandering among the narrow paths between the rice fields, a survivor with one leg among the northern barbarians. Even though I leave my dead body in the barbarian country, yet shall my spirit surely again serve my emperor. Now this is the reason why, since that time, a letter is often called Gansho or Gansatsu, goose script or goose note 1. Ah, how pitiful, said the king. Sabu is still alive. How praiseworthy is this intimation. Then he sent out an army of 1,000,000 horsemen under the general Rai Ko, and this time the forces of Han were victorious and the army of the barbarians was routed. On hearing of the victory, Sabu came crawling along out of the fields and proclaimed his name and title. With his one leg, and aged by the frosts of 19 winters, he was born in a litter to his former country. When he had set out against the barbarians at the age of 16, he had wrapped round his body the banner presented to him at that time by the emperor, and now taking it off again, he presented it once more in the imperial presence, whereat both emperor and subjects were filled with admiration beyond measure. As a reward for his great and meritorious conduct, Sabu received a grant of large territories from the emperor, and was raised to the high office of 10, Shoku Koku. Now Rai Shō, Kei stayed in the barbarian country and did not return, and though he did nothing but lament and try to find a way of getting home, the barbarian king would not permit him, and so he could do nothing. The king of Han, however, had no idea of this, and thought that Rai Shō Kei was a disloyal subject, so he had the dead bodies of his parents dug up and beheaded, while his 6 nearest relations, father, mother, elder and younger brothers, wife and son, were all treated as criminals. When Rai Shō Kei heard of this, he was extremely grieved, and writing a letter in which he stated that he was by no means disloyal, but ardently desired to return to his country, he sent it to the king of Han. The king, having read it, exclaimed, "Ah, one, how sad! He is indeed no disloyal subject," and greatly regretted that he had caused the bodies of his father and mother to be disinterred and desecrated. Thus, just as Sabu of Han fastened a letter to a goose wing and sent it to his native land, so did Yasuyori in Japan send his verses home with the waves for bearers. One sending a written message, the other a couple of stanzas, one in a remote age and the other in these latter days. Though the one was far away in a barbarian land, and the other was but in Yikegashima, and the times were so different, yet the spirit of both was the same. How truly worthy of admiration they were.